until forever. I think, I guess, until the end of this year, I guess.
Yeah, which is also a bit weird because they've just announced the first group of tourists coming in from China, going straight to Phuket.
Straight, not
straight.
go through Bangkok, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Because the economy is not great, right? And Thailand depends so much on tourism, so we'll see what happens. Hi, Parafendi.
Hello, Sami. Really good to see you there.
Thank you. It's really good to see you.
Yeah. It's been a long time. Almost how many years? Huh?
A few years. Yeah.
Nice.
How is it possible that you look younger and younger? You have to give me your secret. I am jealous.
I'm against the nature, I think. The older I am, the younger am I.
Love it.
Are we said about it? You know, it's a matter of stem cell. You know, you're just changing the cell. You know, naturally to the younger cell.
Yeah, I've actually checked on that. I know they have it here in Thailand.
Oh, really? Yeah, they have plenty and they are cheap. No, but mine is natural, you know, natural. It's not something invented, something natural.
That's great. That's great. I hope you've been keeping well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. What you need to do is always laugh, smile. You know, every day you have to remember how many times you smile to people, you know. And then of course move. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great motto.
Zoom is very bad actually. So after Zoom, make sure that you need to walk for 15 minutes.
Now Rafendi is preaching us, yeah. He's becoming ustad now. Anyway.
Yes, but Parafendi is right. Moving is important.
Yeah, it is. Otherwise, all your circulations, your blood, your lymphatic, your everything will be stuck, and that's begin the problem.
Yeah, I don't think I've had too much this much issues with sitting since COVID.
Yeah.
Just so much laptop and so much sitting.
Yeah, that's why you need to be careful. This COVID makes you a lot of sitting in front of Zoom.
Yeah.
Webinar, Zoom, crazy.
Yeah.
So we are now about 15 minutes before. Who do we have now? Ibu Sutia. Selamat siang, Mbak Sutia.
Ya, selamat siang, Mas.
Salam kenal.
Ya, apa kabar?
Alhamdulillah, baik-baik. Oh, itu. Bu Sutia itu backlight, Bu ya. Jadi agak ada cahaya di belakang ya. Nah, mungkin lebih bagus kordanya ditutup kali. Ya. Hai Rachel.
Apa kabar Pak Rafendi? Apa kabar semuanya?
Kabar baik.
Kabar baik.
Rachel, you also look good. Not
Thank you,
much
Pak.
sitting.
Berusaha. Semuanya sehat-sehat aja. Pak Rafendi gimana, Pak?
Alhamdulillah, puji Tuhan, sehat.
Belum berani kemana-mana ya, Pak?
Oh, saya setiap hari keluar.
Oh ya, oke Pak.
Setiap hari. 3 times a week, I walk in GBK,
Oh,
Bung Karno Stadium.
yeah. I heard itu ya, it's very empty
Yes, it is very empty.
because there's no one.
Okay.
Anu mah kok silo.
Is Mr. Itsu Adachi already in?
Not yet.
Mhm. How come is Daniel Avegra? Strange. Okay, I need to rename my own. Aneh.
Wow, I think
Apa yang terjadi?
it will be me. From Yuyun,
Di dalam versi terakhir masih ada Ibu Evi.
Well,
Oke, I know, get it. Pak Irham, mohon maaf, itu di rename ya. Kayaknya gara-gara undangan invitation-nya yang panelis itu dari aku, jadi memang semua akhirnya pakai namaku. Di link yang itu. Oke, rename. Kayaknya itu gara-garanya. Jadi Pak Rafendi juga.
Mas. Oke, halo Bang Rafendi,
Terima kasih, Pak
apa
Ilham.
kabar?
Halo Pak Ilham. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us. Very nice research ya.
Thank you.
Very strong finding.
Halo Isvi. Just want to say hello to Isvi.
Isvi is
Our translator. Welcome, Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum. Are you there? Yeah, Mbak Setia, it looks much better now. Nah, itu dia. Hello, Excellency Yuyun, how are you? Please unmute.
Belum keluar gambarnya, oke. Udah keluar gambarnya. Apa kabar?
Kabar baik. Your hair is getting longer and longer. Yuyun.
Rambut, iya, rambut pandemi.
Pandemic. Halo Ibu Isvi, how are you? Wah, kedengeran suaranya ya. Oh, dia suara translator ya. Oh, sorry. Okay, I cannot hear because you are channeled through the translator channel. Ibu Isvi, it's okay.
Awi.
Yes, Mbak.
SCMW lagi buat ASEAN Guideline on the Return and Reintegration.
Ya.
Diundang nggak?
Belum diundang.
Summit
Saya
depan.
saya dengar.
Ya, summit depan bakal di-adopt. Kayaknya itu udah diskusi yang dilakukan oleh ILO.
Halo, ya.
Tahun kemarin. Coba ditanya-tanya ke Bu Eva.
Ya, Eva. Sayang banget dia nggak bisa sekarang. Kalau bisa langsung kita tanyain kan. Tapi anyway, nanti pasti kita engage lah. Karena juga nggak ngelibatin kita juga kan.
Karena penelitian yang sekarang dan juga penelitian yang sebelumnya bisa jadi memberi masukan.
Oke.
Return and integration gitu. Jadi kalau di buku yang ini kan bukan hanya anak yang stay behind. Jadi ketika orang tuanya nggak ada, terus kalau orang tuanya balik, itu juga ada masalah kan?
Oke, ya.
Mungkin bisa ini juga kali kontribusi ke dalam guideline itu, hubungan emosional, sosial, psikososial anak terhadap orang tuanya yang pergi migrasi.
Yeah, that's good. We have invited actually Ibu Eva, tapi dia tidak bisa. And we also have invited Madam Duk from the chair of SCMW.
SCMW, unfortunately,
there was no response.
Yeah.
Welcome, Mr. Itsu Adachi.
Konnichiwa. Adachi-san. So before we start, I'd like to introduce all panelists, meaning that those who can appear on the screen, because we use the webinar method, meaning that the participant cannot participate in this, but they can participate through direct addressing the question or concern in the chat of Q&A chat box. So here in this panelist, there is Itsu Adachi-san, the Executive Director from the Sasakawa Foundation, and then Samini from the Executive Director of Forum Asia, the the moderator of our session today, Pak Rafendi Jamin. Pak Rafendi Jamin, and then Excellency Yuyun Wahyuringrum, Indonesian representative to ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, Mbak Yuyun, and then Pak Irham Saifuddin, is Indonesian representative, ILO representative to Indonesia and Timor-Leste, and then Rahel from program manager of East Asia and ASEAN, Rachel, mainly work in ASEAN, and also the main researchers and the editor, Yoga Prasetyo. Yoga is here with us. And then from HRWG, Jess will be as an MC and as a host, Icha. And then I think we are about 2 minutes to start. So I think the flow will be, the MC will open the discussion and then give the floor to Pak Rafendi. And then there will be two presentators, which is Pak Yoga and Ibu Yuyum. Apparently, Ibu Yuyum haven't really joined with us yet. So we wait for Ibu Yuyum. And then after that, all panelists or discussion will respond to the presentators, which is Pak Yoga and Ibu Yuyum. So this is basically the discussion from the panelists. And then after that, still led by Pak Rafendi to have a Q&A session. Most likely we will talk about ways forward. So basically this is the only session that we want to conduct this afternoon. I thank you so much. We wait a bit for the opening. Thank you. I'm Daniel Abigram, sorry, I'm the representative of Human Rights Working Group. Thank you so much for the support, Forum Asia and Sasakawai Post Foundation, the SPF. My regard to my colleagues there, friend.
Mas Awi, Pak may I have questions? When the participants can ask questions, like is it Yoga and William will present and then everyone will give like reactions and we open the question and answer, or how's the when the people can ask questions, Pak?
Yeah, hello. Okay, Rachel, because this tools that we are using now is webinar Zoom webinar. So that means not all participants are reflected on the screens, only the panelists, those who are promoted as promoted as panelists, you can see it on the screen. And there is, in that way, there is no mechanism of raising hands. So there is no direct question could be raised by participants. All questions should be typed into the icon of Q&A. Yeah, so that's the way. So that's why I wrote yesterday as well email telling that feel free to answer if there is any question addressed to you in the Q&A during the process.
Okay.
And then I can also then highlight it when I think that's a quite important answer and question and answer that has been addressed in Q&A. So that's how we do it.
Thank you, Pak.
You're welcome. Selamat siang, Ibu. Good afternoon, Ibu Ginting.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm late.
All right, you are not really late.
Halo, Mbak Yuyun, apa
Just on
kabar?
time.
Ya, Bu.
Kapan ke Den Haag lagi?
Aduh, belum tahu. Tahun depan deh kayaknya.
2022, Mbak.
Enggak dong, 2001. 2021 udah doktor.
Yeah, we are still waiting for Excellency Yuyum, not Yuyun, but Yuyum. So I really have to spell yum, not yun. I don't know why they have the same name. Yeah.
Mine is only nickname. So she is the original.
Okay.
Oke, gini, aku forward, kirim emailmu, nanti aku forward lagi, tapi
So
nggak di rename ya.
Daniel is trying to help Ibu Yuyun to get into the panel. Hafiz juga belum ada nih. I see Ibu Yuyum is entering the panel. Selamat siang Ibu Yuyum. Fahmi Paryani. Unmute dulu Ibu Yuyum.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Unmute. Yes, here.
Selamat siang Ibu Yuyum.
Selamat siang. Ini yang ngomong yang mana nih? Saya ngeliat wajah itu. Bingung.
Yang ngomong yang ini.
Oh, yang itu. Nah, makanya oke.
It's good to see you here.
Okay, thank you. Wait a moment. Biar terang.
Halo.
Okay, Mr. Hafiz, welcome.
Yeah.
Could you please rename your screen? Because now your name status.
Is it possible for host to rename my name, because I log in from my handphone, and so that I can't to.
Okay, wait.
I'm so sorry, I'm still in my workshop and facilitate drafting a national action plan. And so that I must take off break at moment to join in this meeting actually.
Okay, Pak Director Hafiz, thank you for that. I will ask Daniel to rename you.
Yeah.
But if it is not successful, I think we know that it is you, not Daniel Abigra.
I will show myself during the discussion actually.
Okay.
When
Okay.
I can,
I think we could start our session. I'd like to give it to our MC. Over to you, our MC.
Halo. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending and welcome in online policy dialogue and book launching of Stay Behind Children in Myanmar, Indonesia, and the Philippines, implementing ASEAN Declaration on the Protection of Children in the context of migration. In this webinar, we will hear a presentation from Mr. Yoga Prasetyo, migration scholar activist who also is the writer of this book, and also a presentation from Her Excellency Yuyung Fahmi Pariani, representative of Indonesia to ASEAN Commission on the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Women and Children, ACWC. Beside the speakers, we also have discussions in this event who will give to the presentation of the speakers. The discussions are Ms. Sutia. Hello, Ms. Sutia. I can't see you. From Institute for Population and Development Studies. Also, we have Ms. Valentina Gintings, Assistant Deputy for Child Protection from Violence and Exploitation, Indonesian Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. Also, we have Ms. Eva Trisiana, representative of Indonesia to ASEAN Committee. Unfortunately, she can't be here, sorry. We have Her Excellency Yuyun Wahyuringrum. Hello, Mbak Yuyun. Representative of Indonesia to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commissions of Human Rights, AICHR. We have Mr. Irham Ali Saifuddin, Program Officer from ILO Indonesia and Timor-Leste, and Ms. Rachel Judistariaro, Ms. Rachel, Program Manager Office in Southeast Asia from Forum Asia. And this dialogue will be moderated by Mr. Effendi Jamin. Hello, Mr. Effendi, Senior Advisor of Human Rights Working Group. This event is jointly organized by Human Rights Working Group, Forum Asia, and Sasakawa Peace Foundation. So first, we will hear an opening speech from Mr. Muhammad Hafiz, Executive Director of Human Rights Working Group. Mr. Hafiz.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the participant and also especially for the speakers and discussion, and especially for my friend, my colleague in HRWG, and also from Asia that working hard to succeed this launching book or discussion. I'm Muhammad Hafiz from HRWG, the Acting Executive Director. Yeah, congratulations for all of the writers and contributors, including also Yoga Prastio, our colleague in HRWG, as editor of book. And this book actually filling a gap, the situation, filling a gap of a misunderstanding about the situation of the migrant workers. It's not only about migrant workers at all, but specifically we focus on the children that are behind or stay behind in terms of protection and promotion and the development of the migrant workers issues, especially in Indonesia, Myanmar, and also Philippines that become our focus in this research. I would like to thank you to our partner from Sasakawa Peace Foundation that really consistent and giving a concern on this issue. And because of them, actually, this discussion, this research, and also much of this initiative from the civil society, including also HRWG, can be conducted and can be implemented. We hope that in the next or in the other opportunity, we can also strengthen this cooperation with the other issues and the innovative and initiative work. And the last one, I would like to thank you for the participant and also some speakers that committed to become a discussion and giving context and feedback about the result of research, and especially also how we can create the recommendation and follow up strategic activities to resolve the problem and tackling the situation. Thank you very much. That's all from me as representative of HRWG, and hope we can discuss the fruitful today and give you new insight, new perspective, new initiative to work together to save our children, to save our future. Thank you very much, and good discussion, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hafiz. And now we would like to hear an opening speech from Ms. Shamini Darsni Kalimutu, Executive Director of Forum Asia. Ms. Shamini, hello.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm always so impressed when people can say my full name. So thank you for making my day. Good afternoon, everyone from Bangkok. It is truly a deep privilege for me to be addressing you today on this occasion of the book launch and policy dialogue surrounding Stay Behind Children in Myanmar, the Philippines, and Indonesia. Firstly, I would like to convey my congratulations to HRWG, the authors of this amazing report, together with the editor, for this crucial insight into a segment of the vulnerable population, children in Indonesia, Myanmar, and the Philippines, who stay behind as a result of parental migration. And this group is, as Hafiz very nicely said in his opening remarks, is this book fills in the gap, as he said, because this group is often overlooked and under-researched. Through this report, you are drawing attention to a looming crisis if policymakers, governments, and regional mechanisms do not up their game and address the issues that this report rightly raises. The report is an enticing and insightful read into the complexities surrounding migration and the impacts of migration. ASEAN's 2018 estimates say that the number of migrants from Southeast Asia stands at around 21 million, with 6.8 million of whom migrated within the region, which begs the question, what is the social cost of migration? And what is the cost to stay behind children? The report finds that policy and/or government responses to the phenomenon of stay-behind children, as mentioned earlier, is under-researched. That's why this report is important, because it fills in a gap to take a closer look at this issue. At this juncture, do allow me to draw your attention to a report that Forum Asia put out in August, titled Human Rights in Southeast Asia in Times of the Pandemic. The report is a culmination of a series of webinars organized by Forum Asia, SAPA, and SHAPESI, held between March and May of this year. The webinars cumulatively discussed measures taken by ASEAN and its member states in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and their impact on the human rights situation on the ground. Webinar participants had discussed specific challenges faced in the region, including those which impacted children and youth as a result of migration. What we found is this, that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the vulnerability of children and youth in terms of disproportionately disrupting the education of children, adolescents, and youth, their means of communication with their social networks, as well as access to basic services. Further, the economic depression caused by COVID-19 is expected to bring about a surge in youth unemployment, particularly among those who work in the informal sectors. Youth that are stateless, refugees, or homeless have become even more vulnerable because they are unable to or have great difficulties in accessing state welfare. As dependents, children and youth are also deeply impacted by their parents' loss of jobs and income. Here, I would like to offer a quote by Mueda Nawanat of Earth Rights International, when she said during one of the webinars speaking about young migrant parents, and I quote, "When they lost their jobs, they could not support their family financially. They don't have enough to eat, and they may not be able to afford school for their children. The kids dropped out of school, and we are concerned that they will become child laborers or be victims of child trafficking." Close quote. This is what we are up against. The report for which we are gathered here today brings home the importance of Mueda's message. Children are more than just beneficiaries. They are active citizens who deserve to be heard and need to have policy interventions that take into account the challenges that are unique to them. We as civil society have a responsibility to continue pushing for governments of the Philippines, Myanmar, and Indonesia, along with other Southeast Asian governments, to respect obligations under the UN Conventions on Women and Children. This is why Forum Asia, along with our member organizations and partners, are reiterating our call to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights and the ASEAN Commission on the Protection and Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Women and Children to collaborate as a matter of urgency, a thematic study on human rights during the COVID-19 pandemic, and more specifically on gender and children-related aspects, also considering the impacts of migration in this area. We are also calling on ACWC with support from ICHA to ensure that governments implement protection measures to tackle the increased risk of violence against women and children during the pandemic. As a final note, I'm sure that the discussions today will lead to some significant policy recommendations which civil society can use to advocate for change in the lives of stay-behind children more specifically. A lot of the issues that I also raised are in connection with the impact of stay-behind children. So this issue, and I'm sure the discussions that will follow, will need to tackle the various aspects that eventually will bring change to the lives of stay-behind children. With this discussion today, I trust that we are bringing to the forefront a group that is less visible no more. My congratulations once again, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Hello. Thank you, Ms. Shamini, for the speech. And now, the last one, we will ask Mr. Itsu Adachi. Mr. Adachi, Executive Director of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, also would like to give an opening speech. Mr. Adachi.
Yeah, thank you very much for your kind introduction. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And my name is Adachi, Executive Director of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. It's my great pleasure to warmly welcome you to this policy dialogue on migration and book launch on the child stay behind. Children stay behind. First of all, on behalf of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to Mr. Hafiz Muhammad, Human Rights Working Group, and Mrs. Shamin Walshuni Karimutu, Forum Asia, for organizing. Sorry, it's a little bit long. For organizing the wonderful meeting. I'm very grateful for our foremost experts across region attending the online event for this the positive engagement. The Sasakawa Peace Foundation is the private foundation based in Tokyo. We specialize in the field of the international cooperation and exchange with a strong commitment in the Asia region. I myself was recently joined to Sasakawa Peace Foundation as an executive director after long working experience in JICA. So I spent 35 years at the JICA, the government, Japanese government organization, and the supervision of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. So in the past several decades, as the globalization proceeds and international interconnectedness gets deepened, migration became a global agenda. We have experienced refugee crisis in Europe and Asia, and xenophobia and the segregation between hosting country and migrant communities becomes one of the most pressing challenges in our time. Furthermore, the recent COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated the vulnerability and isolation of migrant communities and intensified the magnitude of this challenge, as Ms. Chamini mentioned. Our foundation started to work on demography and migration in 2008. Until recently, our works had been mostly focused on Japanese policy issues for migration, including receiving and resettlement of refugees. However, since year 2017, we have expanded the scope of our work to include policy agendas surrounding migration and movement of people in Southeast Asia. Since then, we have been privileged to work with Mr. Rafidi Jamin, Mr. Daniel Avigura, and his team from Human Rights Working Group. Our partnership projects include CSO's consultation meetings and baseline study of migrant workers' rights in ASEAN, as well as a research on pre-departure process of migration from Indonesia to Japan. I think today's topic, staying behind children, is one of the most significant but neglected issues in the region, which highlights the risk of negative effects of migration. You might have heard that the Japanese government received its immigration law in April 2019. In the revision, the government created new visa category aiming to receive 350,000 new migrant workers over the next 5 years. The migrant workers were expected to work for 14 designated sectors, including elderly care, construction, agriculture, and so on. Most of them are 5-year temporary status, and they are not allowed to bring their families. The revision was mostly driven by business pressures, and unfortunately lacks human rights perspective and consideration of impact on sending communities and children staying behind. We expect this research will urge stakeholders and people in receiving countries, including Japan, to deepen their understanding on the risks of negative impact on sending communities and children. Moreover, we believe this research will offer rich resources for us to rethink the future policy direction for mutually beneficial and constructive framework for migration, both for sending and receiving countries. Finally, I'd like to appreciate our partner, a Human Rights Working Group and researchers and an editor of the book for their dedicated work. I sincerely hope that today's meeting will be a very fruitful opportunity and lead us to the next step forward for our partnership. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Adichie and Adachi, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Adachi. And before I give the floor to Mr. Effendi, I would like to inform the participants or attendees, if any of you have any question during the discussion, you can write it down on the Q&A box. Maybe it's in upper left of your screen. If you have any question, you can write it down to the at the Q&A box. Don't forget to write your name and your institution, also to whom you want to ask the question. And we have also this, what is it, polling. You can take some time to fill in the polling before we start the discussion. We're still waiting. All right. Okay, Mr. Effendi, give the.
Sure. You can share the result.
Okay, the result. Do you know that there are serious problems with migrant workers' children? Yes, 100%. No, 0%. Do you think the government has any attention or not on this issue? Yes, 50%, and no, 50%. Great. Okay. So now Mr. Effendi can take the.
Okay, thank you so much, Jesse, for introducing me. I like to welcome all panelists, two resource persons, Yoga and Yuyum, as the main presenter of our afternoon.
Sorry, is it showing?
And I would like also to welcome participants who are attending this forum, coming from, well, I can claim all parts of Indonesia, but at least from Lombok, Timur, and from other part of Indonesia, as well as participants coming from some ASEAN countries, particularly from Myanmar and the Philippines. This afternoon, we will have this presentation at the same time launching of this research that will be presented by Yoga Prasetyo. He's a migration scholar. He's also an activist, a very young one, very promising. And then it will be followed by the presentation from Excellency Yuyum Fahmi Faryani, the representative of Indonesia to the ASEAN Commission on the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Women and Children, or ACWC. She will focus her presentation on the declaration that was actually drafted by ACWC and adopted by the head of state, endorsed by the head of states of ASEAN. Declaration on the right of the children in the context of migrations. So with that first part of our afternoon, we will hear the findings from Yoga about the research that was actually intended as an effort to fill the gap, as it was mentioned in the opening speech from Shamini and from Hafiz Muhammad. And it's relevant as well for the program of, for the process of migration beyond ASEAN to Japan, where Japan is trying as well to increase the number of migrants to fill the gaps, lack of labor resources in the country, that will definitely face the same issue that we are going to discuss this afternoon. After the presentation of the two key presenters on the issue, we will have the second part of our afternoon, that is the part titled Implementing the ASEAN Declaration on the Right of Children in the Context of Migration. Although it has a separate title, but it has actually a similar meaning of responding to the key findings of the research. How the key finding of the key research of the research actually fit in the context of ASEAN effort on the implementation of the right of the children in the context of migration. We will have 5 responders or discussion. They are coming from different entities, one from civil societies, one representing governments, in this context, Indonesian government, the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. And we will have, of course, representative from the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission of Human Rights, Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum, followed by response from somebody coming from the global organization, Mr. Irham Ali Saifuddin, the program officer of ILO in Indonesia, International Labor Organization. And lastly, the responder of this afternoon will be Rachel Yudhistari, our program manager of East and Southeast Asia from Forum Asia. So that is actually the design of our afternoon. And as you already heard from Jesse, that all participants are requested to type your question into the Q&A icon, which can be seen on the screen. And that questions can also be answered directly by to whom you are addressing the question. So it will be good before you before you type the question, you mention the name and your institution, as well as to whom you address the question. If you don't have anybody specifically, you can just say to all panelists. So in that context, all panelists and discussant will be able as well to directly answer your questions by typing in the answer column. But of course, as moderator, I will try, if I can, probably read all the questions, but based from our experience, sometimes we will not be able to read all the questions. And I need to have to make some clustered questions that have a similarity. So that will be the day, the order of the day, and how are we going, the modality, how are we going to proceed further in the discussion. Now, having said that, without further ado, I like to invite now Mr. Yoga Prasetyo to have the presentation of the research that we are now launching today. Over to you, Yoga.
Thank you, Pak E. Is it showing? Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. To begin with, I'd like to thank the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and Forum Asia for their generous support, and of course, the organizing team of the Policy Dialogue and Book Launch. And by the way, I'm sorry for having my camera turned off. It's for a personal reason. So today I have the pleasure of sharing the findings of a baseline study that the Human Rights Working Group has done, which is manifesting in the book that's showing up on your screen now. It's titled Stay Behind Children in Myanmar, the Philippines, and Indonesia. And I'd like to take this opportunity to also acknowledge the massive contributions of the researchers who are now with us as well. I thank Mr. Anderson Villa of the Mindanao State University in General Santos, the Philippines, Ibu Tia Satnawulan, Ibu Adrian Tiara Hapsari, Ibu Diahworo, Bapak Dalhar Sodik, and Ibu Sriwidayanti from Jenderal Sudirman University, and Ibu Afianti Aziz of the University of Indonesia, and then Mr. Laring, who was previously with the Freedom House in Myanmar, and Ms. Motuzar, who is a fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. Sorry. Oh. Yeah, so migration, or labor migration to be specific, has been seen as a global phenomenon, which is often described in the media as a swarm, an exodus of people coming in from poorer countries in search of a better living in a more economically prosperous country. But according to the International Organization for Migration, there are about 272 million international migrants in the world, which surprisingly amount only to 3.5% of the global population. And more interestingly, this percentage has remained consistent over the past few decades. On the other hand, internal migrants have actually numbered around 763 million people, or almost 3 times the number of international migrants. So that being said, there are actually more people on the move within the country rather than across national borders. But international migration has received increased attention because it's often portrayed as a threat to national security and social fabrics. Destination countries often determine which types of migrants are allowed to stay longer or even permanently, and which groups are to remain only temporarily. And to do this, they impose selective labor migration regimes using skill criteria to attract desirable talents, quote unquote, while keeping low-wage migrants as temporary workers, and a lot of times subjecting them to varying degrees of control and surveillance. So some of the types to keep their stay temporary include, for example, denying these migrants access to permanent residency, prohibiting marriage with the locals, and most of all, forbidding family reunification, which means that the children of these low-wage migrants have no choice but to stay behind in countries of origin. And our study primarily concerns this particular group of children. Okay, the term stay behind children, as we use it in the study, might not be familiar to some of you. So please allow me to lay down a bit of definition. In the existing literature, the term left behind children is actually more commonly used to describe children of migrant workers who remain in countries of origin while their parents migrate. But this definition tends to see the children as passive rather than active agents, whereas it's not always the case. So therefore, scholars have introduced a new term, which is stay behind children, to acknowledge the human agency and subjectivity of the children, as well as to see them as more active agents. Scholars have also begun to study the impacts of parental migration, with the most comprehensive study in Southeast Asia being CHAMSI, or Child Health and Migrant Parents in Southeast Asia. It's a longitudinal study undertaken by the Asia Research Institute of the National University of Singapore, looking at the health, psychosocial, well-being, and school outcomes of stay-behind children. This kind of study is timely and important, given the fact that policy frameworks on the protection of migrant workers at ASEAN level have generally not considered the parental roles of migrant workers, and therefore undermining the needs and the rights of the children that are left behind or stay behind. Also, very few studies on stay behind children actually use a rights-based perspective. So that is why our study aims to fill in this gap and identify the current issues affecting stay behind children, as well as policies to address them. We choose to focus on Indonesia and the Philippines because these are two major migrant sending countries in ASEAN, and Myanmar because there's very limited knowledge of the situation of stay behind children over there, mainly because it's also a new migrant sending country in the region. We collected primary and secondary data, both quantitative and qualitative, and we used various qualitative methods such as in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, and observations. We talked to the children themselves, we talked to the government, representatives of government agencies, and civil society organizations, communities, and other relevant stakeholders, focusing on education, physical health, mental health, and citizenship or legal documents. But it's also important to note here that the study only assesses the situation of stay behind children without actually comparing them to children in non-migrant households. So these are the findings of the study. I won't go into the country-specific details because of time limits, but if you want to read the details, you could read the book, which we will be distributing shortly after the event. So here, I'll just quickly go over some of the key findings or trends that we see happening in the three countries. In terms of education, for example, we found that school dropout rates among stay-behind children are higher, especially in more rural areas. And this is a result of mixed factors, including limited educational facilities, permissive parenting, a lack of parental supervision, and inadequate financial resources. In the last case, it often happens as families cannot immediately enjoy the financial benefit of migration, since the migrants, for example, are still in the training center or having their salary deducted. So there's some sort of a delay in money transfer. Dropout rates seem to be higher in households where the mothers migrate and the fathers stay behind to take care of the children. And this is not to undermine the parenting role or skill of the fathers. Rather, it does show that traditional division of gender roles persists and remains a challenge. Other issues regarding access to education include delayed schooling and difficulty obtaining government financial support because of a lack of legal documents such as birth certificates. And in relation to health, our study shows that some stay behind children, especially those who are left in the care of their grandparents, they do not receive vaccination against infectious diseases. And this is primarily due to the grandparents' unawareness of the importance of such vaccination. In several cases, however, it's not always because of the unwillingness to seek medical help, but rather it's because of limited medical health facilities and services. Another issue concerns the right to legal documents and illicit practices of bribery and extortion. In Myanmar, for example, we found that many migrants prefer to deliver their babies in Thailand so that they can have Thai birth certificates, hoping that their kids can enjoy educational opportunities in Thailand. In spite of the Thai birth certificates, these kids can still apply for Burmese birth certificates as well. But the process becomes more complicated when the kid is 5 years or above, thus creating a promising business opportunity for brokers who know the loopholes in the bureaucracy. In Indonesia, we found a case in which a stay-behind child with distinct Arab physical features who at the time was applying for a passport. He was extorted by unscrupulous immigration officers, threatening him with deportation if he refused to hand a certain amount of money, which was a lot. And he remarked that he was tossed around from one immigration office to another, only to find the same treatment. He also said that this kind of extortion is not uncommon. He cited examples of such treatments that his mixed race peers experienced. And then with regard to mental health, our study found that bullying is pervasive against stay-behind children, especially those who exhibit physical features distinguishable from those of their parents. In Indonesia, labels like anak haram or illegitimate children are thrown at these children, which then leads to the children withdrawing themselves from their social life or displaying low self-esteem. Other issues reported include loneliness or the feeling of being left alone as a result of restricted communication with their migrant parents, which points to the need to protect migrants' rights and access to communication devices. We also found that with loose parental supervision, stay-behind children are also more vulnerable to a range of other issues, such as child marriage, child labor, sexual violence, usually perpetrated by their immediate relatives, and human trafficking. In terms of policies and initiatives, we have identified some of the initiatives put in place by the governments to mitigate the potentially adverse impacts of labor migration. For example, in 2016, the government of Indonesia created Desmigratif, or Productive Migrant Village. This is a program that promotes community parenting for stay-behind children, among others. But the problem is that it's only a program. It's not a policy sanctioned under a specific law, and therefore its sustainability is put into question. And of course, it has its own flaws, gaps, and challenges, some of which include inadequate financial and human resources. In Indonesia, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through their embassies and consulates, provide population and civil registry services to help register the births among Indonesian communities abroad. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Research, Higher Education and Technology offer scholarships for children of migrant workers, and the Ministry of Education and Culture has deployed several batches of Indonesian teachers in Sabah to teach children of migrant workers who are living with their parents in countries of destination. In the Philippines, the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration offers scholarships to children of overseas Filipino workers, otherwise known as OFWs, through their Enable Kids project. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Education has rolled out the so-called Child Protection Policy to protect children from all forms of abuse, exploitation, violence, discrimination, and bullying. To help register the births among OFWs, the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines extends population and civil registry services through their embassies and consulates. Aside from that, there are also various local government initiatives to protect migrants and their families, including, for example, the Batangas Province Migrants Center. In Myanmar, however, not much has been identified, and that may be due to Myanmar being a relatively new migrant sending country. But the country has ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and adopted a new child rights bill just last year in an attempt to further ensure consistency with the principles of the convention. And just like Indonesia and the Philippines, Myanmar also participates in several regional platforms on the protection of migrants' rights, such as the ASEAN Forum on Migrant Labor. So this is the policy framework in ASEAN. In 2017, the leaders of ASEAN member states came together to renew their commitment to the protection of migrant workers' rights by adopting the so-called ASEAN Consensus on the protection and promotion of the rights of migrant workers. The negotiation for this non-legally binding document took a decade since the previous document, which is the ASEAN Declaration, or otherwise known as the Cebu Declaration. And the debate mainly revolved around the concerns about including provisions on the rights of migrant workers' family members and the legal status of the document, as well as the rights of non-ASEAN workers working in ASEAN member countries, among others. Eventually, the document was adopted without carrying any mention or provision on the protection of children of migrant workers' rights. But in 2019, just last year, ASEAN adopted a new non-legally binding document called ASEAN Declaration on the rights of the child in the context of migration, which embodies the spirit of protection for children in the context of migration, including stay-behind children. And fortunately, today we have the representative of Indonesia to the ASEAN Commission on the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Women and Children, or ACWC for short, which spearheaded the adoption of the document. In fact, she'll be speaking just right after my presentation. So let's hear from her for further information about this. And yes, if we look at the table here, you can see that the history of ASEAN's commitment to child rights actually goes quite far back to as early as 1993. It's also worth noting that now all ASEAN member states have adopted the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which provides the groundwork for further consistency. So in conclusion, we still have a wide range of issues regarding stay-behind children's rights to health, education, legal documents, and mental well-being. I also want to point out that aside from these problems, we also have issues relating to data. So far, we don't have any exact, reliable, let alone disaggregated data on the number of stay-behind children. But ironically, the governments have a strong data collection on the amounts of remittances, which simply goes to say that the government's primary concern is more on the economic potentials of migration and less on the ordeals or predicaments of the families of the migrants, especially the stay-behind children. We also see a lack of government initiatives, but we also recognize that there are a lot of modalities at various levels, as we can see in the table, both at regional and national levels, and we can leverage these modalities to further push the government to promote the rights of stay-behind children. And lastly, we found that there is a care deficit in two groups, namely the stay-behind children and the stay-behind grandparents, who often replace the role of the migrant parents as caregivers. While grandparents may not see this upbringing as a burden, it's worthy to rethink how this care responsibility impacts their own well-being, particularly if they're of a senior age and necessitate care themselves. And with this study, we come up with several recommendations, which include developing a robust database of stay-behind children, adopting good practices already spearheaded by local communities, providing support for caregivers, building and improving communication infrastructure in major migrant sending areas, and lastly, leveraging on existing regional instruments. I just want to conclude this presentation by sharing my personal story. I am a child of a migrant worker myself, a single parent. My mom has been working as a domestic worker in Singapore for the past 23 years, since 1997. She did all she could do to provide for me. She always encouraged me to pursue education, which I did. I went to the University of Indonesia and I got a scholarship to study in the United States in National University of Singapore. But the same situation that has molded me into the person that I am today has actually posed major barriers, challenges to other stay-behind children like me. And as we can see, much of the problem affecting us, children of low-wage migrant workers, seems to be overlooked by the government. So that is why, to me personally, this book is really important. It provides us with empirical findings that need to be fed into decision-making processes so that the rights of the children of migrant workers are protected, so that the much needed assistance could be rendered, and so that other children of migrant workers like me can lift their barriers and become whatever they want to be in their life. I leave it here. Thank you so much. I'll hand it over to Pak Effendi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yoga, for your presentation. You took a bit of your allocated time, but that's fine because it was very useful, especially the last part of your testimony that you also actually part of the thing that you have researched together with the team. Congratulations for the team as well. What a very, very interesting result of the research, as well as some policy recommendation that will be discussed later on when we are listening to our discussion in the second part of our afternoon. Now we go to the next speaker, Ms. Excellency Yuyum Fani Pariani, Indonesian representative to the ASEAN Commission on the promotion and protection of the rights of women and children. She will present a specific declaration that ASEAN has already adopted in 2019. It was mentioned in the presentation as well from Yoga as part of the policy framework at the regional level. Policy framework at the regional level, you have this policy statement or declaration at the level of declaration. That means it was a result of very, very intensive negotiation among 10 member states, 10 governments. We will hear the content of the declaration itself and how it is going to be implemented, and how the research that Yoga mentioned will fit in the picture of the implementation. Now, having said that, over to you, Excellency Yuyum Fahmi Pariani.
That's why you confused with two Yuyum and Yuyun always, huh? But thank you, Para Fendi, for your introduction of me, and also thank you for the yoga, for the presentation, the result of the Stay Behind Children. Actually, I got the hard copy of the research, and I read that, and I found this is a good findings. I think is related with the Stay Behind Children in 3 countries. But also maybe because in the what is baseline data, actually we should also prepare when you can conduct the inline data after the many of the implementation by the ASEAN member state. That's very important. And also we have to looking under the UNCRC clustering, not only 5 area you're looking or maybe some issues in there, but maybe you can see the under the a cluster of the UNCRC. For example, for the principle itself, discrimination, participation, best interest, and the others, development and survival and development, and also the other clustering. That's very important related with the children issues under the Stay Behind Children's. In next, maybe next for the inline data. And then for the findings, I'm agree with many of the issue in there. We aware about the lacking of the what you call the focus on the Stay Behind Children. I think that's an agree on that. And continue with my not my presentation, but I have a responsibility to explain about the declaration itself. Actually, declaration is already signed last year in November under the ASEAN Summit in Thailand. And what next after we have the declaration? Because sometimes the declaration already mentioned by the yoga, this is not legally binding. This is only show the commitment from the ASEAN member state related with the issue on the contact children in the migration. And one of the issue, the children in contact immigration, is trafficking and then the stay behind children in there. That's why how we can see and identify the issue already finding in the research. I think how we can see the implementation in the future under the declaration. And after the declaration, actually, I would like to inform you about the SCWC now's ongoing process to develop the regional plan of action on the contact of children in migrations. That's a continuing after the declaration, because the declaration is only commitment, but regional plan of action is the implementation in ASEAN member state. That's why we now develop the technical working group on to develop the regional plan of action under the declaration itself. And we have from the expert from the ACWC, some SWAT also there. And then we have there's not slum, actually, not part, UNICEF, ASEAN Secretariat, ECPAT, some SWAT. This is part of the technical working group. And now we still develop the draft. Actually, and now is already first draft from the zero to become the first draft, that we can focus on the 5 area for the to implement the what we call the declaration on the children in the contact immigration itself. In this 5 area, we can focus on the first is for the policy and procedure. We can focus on that to enhance the accessibility to child protection system, because if we mention the child protection system, in this include the all of things related with the children issues and how the government leading for that the child protection system. For example, about the database, about the regulation, about the welfare system, health education, this is part of the child protection system. That we can see in future how we can enhance the accessibility to child protection system to all children in the context of migration. And the second, the policy procedure to enhance the accessibility to basic services, quality healthcare, appropriate food and nutrition, clean drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, education, social protection, safe place to live, a clean and safe environment, and psychosocial support services for children in the context of migration. I think this is more broad. What we can see, the responsibility by state to provide the access for the children in the context of migration. That we can we can support and we can we commitment to implement the declaration under the RPA is very clear. Not only the title and the declaration, but what the implementation, that we should monitor on that. And the third, we think about the capacity of the relevant actor, because we know not only the government, also we need the stakeholder, for example, the communities, community-based organization, and we need also the private sector. We need also the community leader and everyone who related with this issue. We need to improve their capacity to protect, fulfill, and respect for the children right. And the four, we have to provide the evidence base of the situation of the children. I think from this the result of the research, this is part of the evidence base, whereas the children stay behind children still need uh approach and for the right based approach for them in future, and we have to focus for them. That's a part of the evidence base from the HRWG to finding the issue of the stay. One of the issue is stay behind children. And the four is about the networking and partnership. This is the very important also among us, how we can also link each other and coordinate each other. For example, for the trafficking issues, how we can strong the bilateral coordination with our ASEAN member state. For example, in the Mekong River, they already have developed the bilateral among them, and also maybe Indonesia can build also with the Malaysia is our neighbor countries. That's another networking, and also how the international organization, national humanitarian institution, ASEAN dialogue partner also be part of private sector also be part of this networking to strengthen or to improve the quality of life the children in the contact immigration. That the five area we will still on the discussion, and also after that with the flow of the monitoring, we need the how to monitoring the implementation among the ASEAN member state. That's why in the under RPA itself, with the flow of the indicator under the some activities in there, that we should monitor the implementation, and maybe in the end of the result from the HRWG about the stay behind children, also we can see the improvement on the end of the RPA itself. That's I want to say now. Current the ACWC and with the other technical working group still working on this, and I hope this document also the RPA also will consult in the national level to see what the kind of gap of input from them to make a better for our RPA itself. And then the RPA itself will implement the first we say about the 5 year, but after that they says too ambitious. That's why they become maybe 5 year or maybe 10 year. We agree on the period of the RPA itself. That's a very important what the SCWC doing now to make sure about the right of the children in the contact immigration in future based on the CRC, based on the convention, other convention. I think that's from my side. If you have any question or want to get the document, I cannot share for the RPA because it's still in the draft. But if they're finalized, we can share in the website. Thank you so much. Para Fendi.
Thank you, Ibu Yuyum Fahmi.
Yeah.
Thank you for the very concise presentation, directly responding to the result of the research, the key findings. And thank you for sharing with us the process of RPA. It becomes a trend, I suppose, in the context of regional cooperation within ASEAN to ensure that all this declaratory, inspiring statement of the 10 governments will be implemented. You need a plan of action.
Yes.
So that's good to hear that. That is also the case with the very recent other ASEAN declaration on trafficking in person, on people with disabilities. They always followed with RPA to ensure the implementation. Thank you for that. And yes, it is still a draft, but of course you can discuss with us later on in other opportunity using the Chatham House rules. Really look at it and how it can contribute to the work plan. So we have heard the presentation of both, and I think we are, in terms of timing, is more or less according to the plan. And we will go now to the second part of our discussion. After listening to the presentation of yoga, the key finding, and how actually it was already answered by Yuyum, our second speaker, that this result of the research is very much useful, even as one of the key areas in finding the evidence-based data in order to make a plan of actions, a robust plan of action in addressing the challenges. And we have 5 speakers in the next round, more or less another 1 hour. So I have already asked each speaker to be also more concise in responding and to the research and the presentation of the declaration, so the commitment of the regional level. We have participants from civil society at the regional level and national level. So national level is represented by Ibu Sutia. That will be the first speaker. And civil society from the regional level is Rachel, that will speak at the last part. So we have order of the speaker, civil society from the national level, and civil society from the regional level as last responder or as last discussion. And in between, we have government officials represented by Ibu Valentina Gintings, and also a government institution, but at the regional level, Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum, yeah, and followed by somebody from the global perspective. It was also mentioned in your specific or focus area of the implementation on partnership and networking that will involve international organizations dealing with the issue of migrant rights. Now, without further ado, we know the context of our coming interpretation. On each of them, some of them will have a presentation by slide only to highlight their point. We are not going to have a very long presentation as it was presented by Yoga. And some of them are not using the presentation, the slide presentation. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite now the response from the civil society, the National Civil Society, represented by Ibu Sutia. Ibu Sutia from the Institute for Population and Development Studies based in Malang, right? In Malang or Jember? Malang, right?
Malang.
Based in East Java anyway, in East Java, Indonesia. And she will present, this is not ujuk-ujuk in the context, you know, we have heard already about what are the issues of the children left behind. And now you as civil society, please focus on what you have done. What do you think should be done more? And what do you think that this research is useful or not useful? Please, on 2 guided questions that we have already sent to you, over to you, Madam Sutia. 7 to 10 minutes, please.
Terima kasih Pak Raffendi. Saya mohon izin untuk menyampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia ya Pak ya. Ya.
Yes, I forgot to mention. Yes, you can say it in Bahasa Indonesia. And for those participants who would like to listen a simultaneous presentation, please click the interpretation, the globe icon, click the Indonesian one. So if you click that, you will, oh, sorry, the Chinese. Yeah, it's Chinese, but actually it's Indonesian, all right? Click the Chinese and you will hear the simultaneous presentation, translation from Ibu Isfi. All right, I give it back again to Ibu Sutia. You have the floor, Ibu Sutia.
Baik, terima kasih. Dalam waktu 10 menit, moga-moga saya bisa menyampaikan pengalaman dari seluruh kerja kami selama 5 tahun di 4 provinsi. Dan alhamdulillah kami diberi kesempatan untuk berbagi apa yang sudah kami lakukan. Yang saya hormati semua panelis pada sore hari ini, saya akan menjawab 2 pertanyaan yang sesungguhnya sebetulnya ini juga berangkat dari analisis konteks kondisi anak-anak pekerja migran, terutama mereka yang ditinggalkan di daerah, ya, ditinggalkan di desa. Pada batasan ini kami memang melihat bahwa anak-anak pekerja migran ini tidak hanya mereka yang bekerja di luar negeri, tetapi juga mereka yang bekerja di antar pulau, antar provinsi, begitu. Gambaran yang tadi disampaikan Mas Yoga dari hasil riset sebetulnya tidak berbeda jauh dari apa yang kami temukan di lapangan pada kondisi anak-anak pekerja migran yang ditinggalkan di kampung halaman. Ada beberapa hal yang bisa kita lihat bahwa anak-anak pekerja migran ini tumbuh dan berkembang dengan berbagai stigma, kemudian diasuh oleh orang tua, baik itu ayah, ibu, atau pengasuh pengganti, kakek nenek yang kondisinya relatif miskin. Kemudian dengan kondisi itu tentunya ini membuat anak-anak menjadi terlantar ya pengasuhannya. Kemampuan mereka relatif terbatas karena banyak hal yang tidak bisa mereka akses. Berbeda dengan anak-anak yang lain, jadi di beberapa daerah kami yang menjadi dampingan program kami, banyak anak-anak yang dibawa dari negara di mana orang tua, ibu atau ayah mereka bekerja, dan ketika mereka kembali ke desa atau dibawa ke desa, biasanya secara fisik mereka ini berbeda dengan anak-anak pada umumnya. Ini juga menjadi persoalan tersendiri bagi anak-anak yang ada di desa. Kemudian relatif mereka tidak pernah didengar ya, karena keberadaannya pun juga tidak terdata. Tadi kalau dari hasil riset menunjukkan bahwa database ini menjadi problem karena memang selama ini persepsi publik terhadap anak-anak pekerja migran, anak-anak yang ditinggalkan itu selalu pada konteks yang positif. Jadi mereka dianggap sudah enak hidupnya, terpenuhi kebutuhannya, padahal di sana banyak sekali persoalan yang kemudian dihadapi oleh anak-anak pekerja migran. Keluarga pengasuh dan lingkungan seringkali tidak peduli karena memang persepsi mereka lebih pada bahwa anggapan tadi mereka jauh lebih baik kehidupannya dari anak-anak yatim piatu misalnya, walaupun kita tahu sesungguhnya anak-anak pekerja migran itu juga yatim piatu sosial karena secara hukum dia masih punya ayah, punya ibu, tapi secara fisik mereka tidak hidup bersama. Banyak sekali anak-anak pekerja migran yang tinggal di lokasi yang aksesnya terbatas, aksesnya jauh, sarana prasarananya terbatas. Kalau misalnya mereka bisa beli perangkat smartphone, tetapi seringkali akses juga tidak mereka dapatkan. Ini kondisi-kondisi yang menurut saya tadi tidak berbeda jauh dengan apa yang disampaikan Mas Yoga dari hasil riset, terutama untuk konteks anak-anak pekerja migran di Indonesia. Nah, problem pengasuhan yang ala kadarnya itu sebetulnya, atau pengasuhan yang tidak layak itu kemudian menimbulkan banyak persoalan bagi anak-anak pekerja migran. Jadi stigma yang kemudian dilekatkan itu melekat. Dia disebut anak yang nakal, anak yang liar, anak pembawa sial, dan sebagainya. Yang kemudian ini bisa menjadikan anak-anak salah dalam bergaul. Ya, kemudian salah pergaulan, kemudian mengalami kehamilan yang tidak diinginkan gitu ya. Kemudian dia rentan DO dari sekolah karena biasanya sekolah juga tidak memiliki perspektif perlindungan anak, terutama anak-anak pekerja migran tidak dianggap sebagai bagian dari anak-anak yang membutuhkan perlindungan khusus sebetulnya. Mereka sudah mulai mengenal merokok, kemudian minuman keras, bahkan obat-obat terlarang ya, ini di beberapa daerah kita temukan, menjadi konsumtif, ini terutama pada anak-anak pekerja migran yang kondisi orang tuanya punya penghasilan cukup, dan anak-anak ini seringkali hanya dikirimin uang tetapi tidak punya kapasitas untuk mengelola, jadi untuk financial literasinya itu sangat terbatas. Kalau sudah begitu maka dia rentan ya berkonflik hukum ya, termasuk beberapa kasus anak-anak pekerja migran itu karena kebutuhan tidak bisa terpenuhi, akhirnya dia melakukan tindakan kriminal, misalnya mencuri, dan bahkan ada beberapa kasus juga mereka menjadi korban kekerasan seksual dari para pedofil. Ini juga bagian dari untuk memenuhi kebutuhannya, yang tidak 100% bisa dipenuhi oleh orang tua maupun juga pengasuhnya. Anak-anak yang ditinggalkan beragam usianya, ada yang mulai balita, jadi kalau problem stunting itu cukup tinggi juga pada anak-anak pekerja migran. Karena pengasuhan yang miskin dengan segala keterbatasan itu membuat anak-anak jadi mengalami hambatan dalam tumbuh kembang, sakit dan bahkan meninggal dunia. Mengalami kehamilan yang tidak diinginkan karena pergaulan bebas, menikah dini, ini karena ada problem kehamilan yang tidak diinginkan, ada juga yang karena pengasuh ingin segera lepas tanggung jawab. Menjadi pekerja anak, terutama ini anak-anak laki-laki maupun juga anak perempuan yang seringkali ketika kiriman orang tua dari tempat mereka bekerja itu sangat terbatas, sementara pengasuhnya miskin, mau tidak mau anak-anak menjadi penopang juga dalam konteks pemenuhan ekonomi keluarga. Rentan menjadi korban trafficking. Di beberapa kasus anak-anak pekerja migran kemudian menjadi korban trafficking, menjadi pekerja migran seperti ayahnya atau ibunya, tetapi pada kondisi dia tertraffic. Minder dan menjadi korban kekerasan seksual, terutama ini oleh orang-orang dekatnya ya, jadi bullying dan sebagainya itu seringkali mereka rasakan. Tidak memiliki legal identity yaitu adminduk, administrasi kependudukan, dan ini tentunya akan berdampak terhadap sulitnya akses layanan. Ini fakta-fakta yang kami temukan dari pengasuhan yang tidak layak, pengasuhan yang ala kadarnya. Nah, kemudian bagaimana respon masyarakat sipil, kami bagian dari masyarakat sipil, ketika melihat tantangan yang dihadapi oleh anak-anak pekerja migran. Ada 5 hal yang kami lakukan selama ini, bagaimana mengangkat isu anak pekerja migran itu menjadi isu publik yang kemudian kita bisa melakukan public awareness bahwa fakta anak pekerja migran itu tidak seelok, tidak seindah, tidak senyaman seperti yang publik sampaikan. Jadi bagaimana kita membangun awareness pada masyarakat agar mereka menjadi peduli. Tentunya ini didukung dengan database, informasi, hasil analisis atas kondisi dan permasalahan anak-anak pekerja migran. Ini saya kira kami punya pengalaman cukup efektif untuk membangun empati gitu ya para pihak itu. Memperbanyak pihak-pihak yang peduli terhadap persoalan-persoalan anak pekerja migran. Jadi kami menembus batas mulai dari mereka yang ada di grassroots, kader-kader desa, kader posyandu, kader kesehatan, guru dan sebagainya, para tokoh masyarakat, tokoh agama, jurnalis itu ya, teman-teman yang bekerja di media, kawan-kawan akademisi, anak-anak itu ya, karena sebaya ini cukup efektif juga, jadi forum anak kita sasar juga. Kemudian organisasi pekerja migran yang itu selama ini mungkin sibuk dengan urusan pekerja migran dewasanya, tapi mereka juga tidak menyadari bahwa problematika anak-anak juga luar biasa. Ormas, kita punya jaringan cukup kuat dengan kawan-kawan ormas, dan juga pemerintah di semua level. Ini yang paling penting. Jadi pemerintah desa, kecamatan, kabupaten, provinsi hingga di nasional. Ini saya kira bagian yang harus kita kita kalau bahasa Malang itu kita jawil gitu ya, kita ajak, kita sentuh supaya mereka juga menjadi peduli. Tadi betul bahwa masih ada gap gitu ya. Kalau kita ngomong perhatian enggak, ya ada yang perhatian, ada yang enggak. Dari hasil polling itu menurut saya sangat tepat sekali. Kemudian menginisiasi model intervensi dengan pendekatan inklusi sosial. Kami mencoba mengembangkan pendekatan social inclusion pada konteks bagaimana perlindungan anak-anak pekerja migran. Dengan fokus upaya membangun penerimaan sosial dan keberdayaan bagi anak-anak pekerja migran dan keluarganya. Kemudian membantu meningkatkan akses layanan publik dan bantuan sosial. Jadi kalau tadi masih banyak sekali anak-anak pekerja migran yang tidak punya adminduk, mulai dari akte kelahiran, KK, kartu identitas anak, yang ini tentunya menjadi sulit untuk mereka bisa mengakses layanan-layanan dasar. Serta mengembangkan model pengasuhan bersama. Ini saya kira yang sedang kami gencar upayakan untuk kemudian bisa diadopsi, dikembangkan lebih masif di semua wilayah, dengan melibatkan multi pihak serta mengadvokasi munculnya kebijakan-kebijakan di semua level, di desa, di kabupaten, di provinsi, untuk menjamin inklusivitas bagi anak-anak pekerja migran. Artinya kalau ada kebijakan ini, ada tidak kami, maka akan konteks perlindungan itu akan jalan terus. Menggalang dukungan para pihak untuk keberlanjutan gerakan pengasuhan bersama. Ini saya kira penting dengan prinsip setara semartabat ini. Jadi anak-anak dari manapun, anak-anak siapapun, tentunya pada prinsip pemenuhan hak anak, mereka tidak boleh mendapatkan diskriminasi. Mendokumentasikan dan menyebarluaskan praktek baik dalam bentuk modul pelatihan pengasuhan, karena kami melihat bahwa kapasitas pengasuh terkait dengan pengasuhan yang layak itu sangat terbatas, selain karena faktor ekonomi, tapi juga knowledge dan skill-nya. Kami mencoba mengembangkan itu, supaya praktek baik yang kami hasilkan itu bisa dikembangkan, bisa digunakan oleh banyak pihak. Tentunya dengan inisiasi regulasi di tingkat kabupaten, tingkat desa, jadi tadi betul bahwa bagaimana ada jaminan kebijakan yang bisa menjamin perlindungan anak-anak, termasuk anak-anak pekerja migran ini bisa dilakukan lebih masif. Kami punya pengalaman cukup baik mendorong pemerintah kabupaten untuk menghasilkan satu regulasi Perda Peraturan Daerah Perlindungan Pekerja Migran dan Keluarganya, di mana anak-anak menjadi salah satu hal yang diperjuangkan, serta Peraturan Desa untuk menjamin perlindungan anak. Jadi ini saya kira cukup menarik dari pengalaman kami di lapangan. Nah, konteks pengasuhan bersama yang tadi saya sampaikan itu setidaknya tidak hanya anak-anak belajar akademis, mereka juga belajar agama, mereka juga mendapatkan layanan tumbuh kembang, mereka juga bisa bermain, berkreasi sesuai bakat minat ya, apakah seni, olahraga dan sebagainya. Kemudian mereka bisa belajar berorganisasi karena di sana ada forum anak yang bisa masuk, melindungi anak-anak dari perlakuan salah dan kekerasan, serta bagaimana di dalam pengasuhan itu dipastikan anak-anak bisa mendapatkan akses layanan publik. Yang paling dasar adalah admunduk. Nah, siapa-siapanya di sini multi pihak ya, dari mulai kader, tokoh masyarakat, kemudian guru, kemudian bidan desa, ustadz, ya, perangkat desa, perangkat dusun, forum anak, ya, dari ormas, ada fatayat, ada muslimat, ya, PKK, kemudian kawan-kawan akademisi yang kemudian mereka menjadi relawan untuk menjadi pengasuh, bagian dari pengasuh anak-anak itu. Kemudian kawan-kawan dari lembaga swadaya masyarakat atau lembaga kemasyarakatan, dan tidak lupa yang inti adalah orang tua atau pengasuh, termasuk PMI sendiri. Jadi pekerja migran yang ada di luar negeri pun kita mintai kontribusinya untuk mendukung, mensupport konsep pengasuhan bersama yang diinisiasi oleh kawan-kawan di tingkat komunitas. Dan ini saya kira menjadi sangat penting bahwa ketika ada pertanyaan gimana sih upaya kerjasama dari kami dengan pemerintah lokal untuk mengatasi tantangan APM, saya kira sejak awal kami melakukan kerja-kerja di pendataan saja, kami melibatkan perangkat dusun, perangkat desa. Ya, jadi kami selalu bekerja dengan mereka, dan saat ini bahkan perangkat desa dan OPD atau organisasi perangkat daerah beserta unit layanannya ini menjadi bagian dari forum peduli anak-anak pekerja migran. Nah, ini kita konekkan dengan kelembagaan yang sudah settle, ya. Itu ada gugus tugas kabupaten layak anak, ada gugus tugas desa layak anak. Bagi kami itu mudah karena ini adalah mandatori, ya. Kemudian forum anak ini mendapatkan legalitas. Jadi indikator bahwa pemerintah mendukung itu kalau tadi perangkat orangnya, SDM-nya gitu ya, itu menjadi bagian. Kemudian forum anak menjadi forum relasi, forum pembauran anak ini juga mendapatkan legalitas dan dukungan dari pemerintah desa dan Pemkab. Jadi ada banyak anak-anak pekerja migran yang dulunya dia tidak bisa berbaur, tidak menjadi bagian, tapi kemudian dengan pendampingan kami, dengan pengasuhan bersama itu, akhirnya anak-anak bisa menjadi bagian dari forum anak yang mendapatkan legitimasi dan dukungan dari pemerintah. Kebutuhan dari anak-anak pekerja migran dan pengasuhnya, kebutuhan atas kesehatan, kemudian pendidikan, ya, sarana belajar bermain gitu ya, termasuk bagaimana peningkatan pendapatan pengasuh ini kemudian teradvokasi masuk dalam sistem perencanaan penganggaran desa. Menurut kami ini sesuatu yang cukup baik sebagai respon pemerintah terhadap bagaimana persoalan-persoalan anak pekerja migran dan keluarganya. Munculnya peraturan desa, kemudian peraturan daerah, SE ya, kami di NTB itu bisa mengadvokasi ada surat edaran gubernur, di mana di dalam SE itu penting juga untuk memasukkan konteks perlindungan anak-anak pekerja migran. Walaupun memang pada implementasinya ini harus dikawal terus, karena seringkali di birokrasi itu pergantian pejabat itu juga berdampak terhadap implementasi sebuah kebijakan. Kemudian kader dan embrio pengasuhan bersama ini mendapat support dana dari pemerintah desa dan kabupaten. Artinya ketika kerja-kerja kami ini tersistematisasi di dalam struktur kebijakan desa, maka tidak sulit bagi kawan-kawan kader kami untuk bagaimana menginisiasi konsep-konsep model pengasuhan bersama. Di Sumba ada Omah PG, ada Omah Pande, di Lombok ada Berdengar Bareng, di Malang ada yang berbasis dengan di TPK, tempat ngaji dan sebagainya. Ini semua kemudian mendapatkan support ya, baik itu biaya untuk penyelenggaraan proses kegiatan di pengasuhan maupun insentif kader. Ini saya kira cukup menarik. Nah, yang terakhir saya kira praktek baik yang kami inisiasi ini, yang diinisiasi OMS ini, kemudian mulai dikembangkan lebih luas oleh perangkat daerah, ya. Tentunya memang seperti di beberapa wilayah program kami, di wilayah kerja kami, proses untuk mentransfer praktek-praktek baik ini kita lakukan melalui pendekatan formal dan informal, yang itu kemudian bisa diadopsi, bisa ditindaklanjuti oleh perangkat daerah, khususnya memang yang membidangi urusan perempuan dan anak, gitu ya, dan juga Disnaker tentunya, untuk direplikasi ke wilayah yang lebih luas. Nah, saya kira ini indikasi-indikasi baik bagi kerja-kerja kami yang itu dari inisiatif kecil, inisiatif di tingkat lokal, tapi kami berharap bagaimana ada kerja-kerja advokasi supaya praktek-praktek baik ini kemudian bisa terus sustain, terus berkelanjutan ketika ini sudah kemudian menjadi concern, menjadi komitmen dari pemerintah baik di tingkat desa maupun di tingkat kabupaten. Saya pikir itu Pak Raffendi apa yang bisa kami sampaikan. Semoga bisa membantu memberikan tambahan gitu ya, gambaran atas situasi yang saat ini terjadi pada anak-anak pekerja migran kita. Terima kasih, saya kembalikan kepada Pak Raffendi.
Thank you so much, Ibu Sutia. Thank you. Yes, it is difficult to stop you, but you have already highlighted the achievement, the good practices, and the response of civil society groups in some areas who are having the source of migrant workers in Western Nusa Tenggara, as well as in some part of East Java. There are some expectations, but there are also some challenges. And the challenges is actually on the implementation on what has already been advocated at the local level, at the policy level. So congratulations, you have actually done at 2 levels advocacy, public awareness from different societal groups as well, and the media, and policy advocacy at the village level policy, as well as kabupaten or district level policies. Congratulations for that. Now, I would like now to go to the next speaker. Coming also, this part is perspective from the government. So we have heard already how civil society responds and how they link with the local government. And now we will hear the response from Ibu Valenta Ginting, the Assistant Deputy for Child Protection from Violence and Exploitation, Indonesian Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. Ibu Valentina Ginting, over to you. 7 to 10 minutes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Raffendi. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the God Almighty that now we are in the good, healthy, in the good conditions, whether in this pandemic situations, yeah. We hope that this pandemic will be passed quickly so we can go like Yuyun said that we can go to Den Haag, Yuyun, yeah. So we can enjoy against our life and our duty. So it will honorable year for us from the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protections as the opportunity we have the opportunity sharing the Indonesian child protections as the migrant workers, and how the collaborations amongst the lines minister here to ensure that the fulfill of the child right of the migrants workers in Indonesia. So before I started sharing in these occasions, that I would like to deeply grateful to the authors, Pak Yoga. Thank you for you have tailored the books that it will be very useful for us that when we have reference in formulating the policy regarding the how the child behind migrants workers, the experience in Myanmar, Philippines, and Indonesia. So the issue of migrant workers as the global phenomenon occurring not only in Indonesia, I think, but also it happens in other countries. So in Indonesia, the migrant workers during period 2018 until July 2020, we recorded from the migrant worker placements data that it's about more than 58,000 migrant workers, and most of them are dominated female migrant workers. So one of the Indonesian effort is to reduce unemployment, to take the advantages of job opportunity abroad by sending migrant workers. And we know that, as Ibu Sophia said, that most of them, as the parents, either from come as the married or divorced, and the large of them is come from as a housewife. So it will be a big problem. We know that this is not, they have no choice. They have no choice to leave their family. They have no choice. They have to leave their children. And most of them entrusted their close family and neighboring without considering the big problem, because they have not considering that children will have their right fulfilled. For example, education, as health, care, including vulnerability to neglect or violence due to the incomplete care. So it's a big problem. And for the reasons, Indonesia, the government of Indonesia consider it is necessary to pay the attention and to ensure the protection of children of the migrants worker. The commitment of Indonesians, we can also see that in the constitutions, our constitutions already mandate that every child has the right to protection from violence and discrimination. It means that the Indonesia government has also enacted how the law number 35 2014 concerning the child protection, at the article 59 stated that the government provides special protection to 5 types of children needing special protection. One of them is child who are victims of abuse and neglect during monitoring, prevention, care, counseling, social rehabilitation, and social assistance. So it means that Indonesia also has what we call it. We already have as a member state of the United Nations pledging commitment, the commitment to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, especially goals number 16.2, on one of which reflects the commitment to end violence against children 2030. So in supporting of the achievement of the SDGs, the President's Republic of Indonesia led 5 directives, which are stipulated in 7 national medium-term development plans. We call it RPJMN, and one of which was to increase the quality of competitive human resources. So at the end, the Indonesia government engaged family, how family, community, business world, mass media, we have together to ensure that children of migrant workers obtain the right to education, care, and health. So in these occasions, I would like to say that Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protections collaborate with Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, the National Border Management Agency, and also the Indonesian Migrant Worker Family Development. We have a program, we call it Indonesian Migrant Worker Family Development. So in these programs, we already have in 13 provinces and 65 regency or cities, and we already have 95 districts and 104 at the villages level. So it means that we have these programs, how the family or family caring for the migrants workers, now their knowledge for the family resilience. So we have to educate them how to formulate that, so they have knowledge about how to be the family resilience instead of their parents. So it's already we have in the 13 province. It means that Indonesia also strengthened how the knowledge of people, the society conducting the public awareness of rising campaign, strengthen women's capacity. It's very important because by strengthen the capacity of women, I think they have to think twice, become migrant workers. So we have the program, we call it in home industry program. So how to improve their economy, the economy of women, to have so without having to work abroad, they can independently economic independently. So it means that this home industry we have developed in at district level. So we have also not only improving their economy, we also get away the realization that they have to realize that family resilience is very important, so that the parents do not work around to abroad, leaving children who still need guidance and care. So it means that by strengthening the economy of the independently of the women, they have to think twice to become a migrant worker. And then we also have what we call it the community-based integrated child protection strategy. So this strategy is how to establish, to serve as a community empowerment strategy to ensure that the role of the community to provide protection for the children. So they have to know how to prevent the children, how to make early detection whether there is a violence or there is something happens around their village between the children. So in this strategy, we have the activities, we call it activities, is already have 1,776 around Indonesia at the level of the village level. So it means that I think this is very important for them, how to strengthen the family at the grassroots level. So in ensuring case management, so we also have where there is something child protection need, special protection needs. What is it? We call it need services regarding whether there is violence or there is exploitation among them. We also have we already have what we call it regional technical unit for women and child protections at the regional level. So we already have in the district and cities level. So this services agency participate in handling children's migrant workers who experience neglect or violence due to the separations from their parents. So Indonesia has committed how to condemn all forms of children's abuse and neglect in Indonesia. So it is very providing how to protect to all Indonesian children, including child of migrant worker who are very vulnerable to neglect violence due to separation from their parents. I think it's all from us, from Indonesia. So we hope that that ASEAN country here, we can continue to reinforce regional system. It's very important how to reinforce regional system, cross-border collaborations, and to realize this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Valentina Gintings. Thank you for speaking in your time very well, very concise and very clear. You have highlighted your responses. I mean, not your the government's, the central government responses through the Ministry of Child and Women Protection by having some programs directly actually address the issue of the left behind or the stay behind children. And that's great to hear, because it is also very much linked with the priority areas which was mentioned by Ibu Yuyum earlier on the 5 areas on the regional action plan. So that means your activities in Indonesia could be also become some of the good practices that could be then become regional activities at the level of the implementation of declaration. It's really good to hear that. And it's good to hear the coverage of the programs, 13 provinces, 65 district and city level, and about 95 sub-district and village level. Yeah, probably Indonesia is a huge country, and the area where migrants coming from are also spreading from the Java, West Java, Central Java, Eastern Java, East Nusa Tenggara, as well as Sumatra and Sulawesi. So it's a huge country. It's a big challenge as a government to have this kind of program can be implemented in those areas. And it's very much linked as well with the activities at the local level, at the village level, from the civil society. So you mentioned about community-based integrated child protection. So that's very much sounds similar with what has been said by Ibu Sutia earlier at the level of village and kabupaten or district level. It's good to hear that. If you would like then to answer Ibu Sutia or to respond on that, please feel free to respond. I will give you the time to respond in our way forward discussion. Now, without further ado now, I'd like to invite the next speaker on the line coming from the regional level, the ICHR. Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningru, you're having your coffee. That's great before you speak. So please, it's now your turn as an overarching body of the ASEAN mechanisms, overarching body of the human rights mechanisms. You definitely work closely as well with other entities within ASEAN dealing on human rights, particularly the ACWC, as well as other sectorial bodies which directly dealing with the issue of human rights. There are questions that we have already sent to you, and I thank you for trying to answer that directly to the question. Because I think everybody knows already what ICHR is. We don't need to hear again about what is the task of ICHR, you know, how many members. I assume most of our participants, if I look at the list, they are all aware about the ASEAN, how ASEAN mechanism works. Please highlight your points on the protection of the children in the ICHR work. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Pak Rafendi. Thank you very much, HRWG, Forum Asia, and Sasakawa Foundation for this event. It's very important, very timely as well in our context in the region. And also congratulations for the book. I wrote the endorsement and I really support this kind of activity and kind of initiative. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation because that would be easier for the translator to do the work. So may I have the PowerPoint presentation, please? I I took note on the questions that given to me. The first one is on the character of Aicher as overarching body, and the other one is about trafficking in person. Can I be reminded by the PowerPoint presentation? I'm not sure who will.
Sorry, Yuyun. Yes, it's coming.
Okay, so so please go to the next slide. Oh, why is it PDF? Anyway, so okay, the first question is about the as overarching body. What have Aicher have there been activities collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including SCWC on child protection, particularly for children of migrant workers? So far, we don't have yet the joint activity together with SCWC or SCMW in relation to child protection or children of migrant workers. Aicher has one activity supposed to be happen this year in relation to harmonization of the instruments of ASEAN in relation to migrant workers. Because one of the mandate of the Aicher is to promote the full implementation of ASEAN instruments related to human rights. So that's the answer for the first question. Second question is, as a case of combating TIPs, traffic in person in ASEAN, where Aicher plays an active role in developing joint activities, would this modality be feasible for a child protection program dedicated to stay behind children? So I would like to answer this question with little bit elaborative. So please go to the next slide. But I will skip this one because according to Pak Rafendi, everyone understand about the mandates. I also would like to skip this one. So Aicher role, Aicher has functioned to come up with a standard setting, cooperation and policy supports, protection, human rights strategy, research and capacity building, dialogue and engagement. When it comes to right of migrant workers, these are some of the activities, the focus areas that Aicher is doing and should be doing. So when you change the right of migrant workers in ASEAN to stay behind children, then Aicher is expected to come up with a standard setting, cooperation, policy support, protection, human rights strategy, research and capacity building, dialogue and engagement. Working with sectoral bodies will be under cooperation as well as under dialogue. It depends on the objective of the activity. Next, please. So as Aicher has a role to promote the full implementation of ASEAN instruments related to human rights, one of the instruments that Aicher is interested is on migration. That Aicher Indonesia is taking a lead at the moment for the issue of migration in Aicher. So we have at least so far three documents, three core documents. I'm sure there are a number of documents in relation to migrant workers so far, but let's highlight those three documents because the session question the topic of the session is looking at the challenges and opportunity of the ASEAN Declaration on the Rights of the Child in the context of migration. First, the source that we are looking at is the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration 2012. Article 4 talk about right to migrant workers are human rights. Basically, the Article 4 talk about right to migrant workers, women, children, elderly, person with disabilities, marginalized group, vulnerable groups are human rights. So this is a blanket statement from ASEAN, from ICHR, to recognize the rights of the groups. And if you look at the third table, or the table, so it's actually highlight on who will be doing the review, implementation, as well as the monitoring. The declaration does not mention very explicitly about this kind of review mechanism, because this kind of declaration is different from the other declaration. This is a catalog of rights, not catalog of commitments. So it's so different kind of declaration. So there is an assumption that ICHR is the one will be promoting and reviewing and monitoring the implementation of human rights, as mentioned in the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. Another document that we are looking at is the ASEAN Consensus on the Protection and Promotion of the Right of Migrant Workers. The content-wise, it talk about the obligation of the sending state, the obligation of the receiving state, the right of migrant workers, and regional cooperation. As the previous speaker already mentioned, that this document does not mention anything about children. Either children stay behind or children as migrant workers. It said about family, but not necessarily the topic that we are focusing on. This declaration, the consensus, mentioned about ACMW to function as to develop a plan of action, report the progress, and doing the review. So that is why ACMW come up with a plan of action, asking ICHR and other sectoral bodies on what they are doing so far in relation to ASEAN consensus. So we have been answering that kind of question coming from ACMW. And the other document that very important, this document fill the gaps on the absence of children in the ASEAN consensus, the topic of children in the ASEAN consensus. Let's look at the content of the document. It defines children in the context of migration. So they are the one that unaccompanied or separated children. So perhaps this is the area in which we will be able to look at stay behind children in the process of migration or not. So perhaps, I'm not sure because I was not part of the drafting this document, but Ibu you may be able to clarify the meaning of the unaccompanied and separated children. The other category of children in this declaration is vulnerable to become victims of violence, abuse, exploitation, trafficking in person, gender violence within the context of migration. So because I think the word context of migration is to signify between this category of children and children who are not having relations with the process of migration. And also the third category of children in this document is those who are living with life-threatening infectious disease. And the fourth categories of this fourth category of children in this declaration is children with disabilities. But these four should be looked at in the context of migration. So I think context of migration becoming the parameter in which we should be able to understand children as addressed by this declaration particular. The declaration also come up with the suggestions for the ASEAN member states, AMS, putting here, to strengthen national system on child protection, to develop a referral system and assistance for children, allocating resources, providing birth certificate, alternative child detention, data collection. When you look at this six requests or six suggestions for the ASEAN member state, you might find that there is no clear idea about whether it is only for children following the parents to migrate or children stay behind, because it's mixed in many ways. And then declaration also suggests cooperation, which I found very useful, especially the declaration suggests that the border governance policies should look at child sensitive issues, or should use a child sensitive approach. And the other one is on the measures to prevent children's vulnerabilities in migration. Again, this is the area in which where the issue of children stay behind can also fall under this kind of cooperation among member states in ASEAN. The role of actors also mentioned in this declaration. It talk about NHRI, National Human Institutions, and ASEAN dialogue partners. So there is no mention about ASEAN sectoral bodies or ASEAN organs. So ICHAR is not included here. But anyway, it is a not nature for ICHAR to work with other sectoral bodies. The declaration mentioned that the one should do the review is the MMSWD, ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Social Welfare Development. So this, I don't understand this, why MMSWD, why not ACWC, because ACWC is actually the one that should monitor this kind of document, the implementation of this document by member state and by other sectoral bodies. But perhaps this is something that ACWC should answer. Next, please. I also try to look at how children who stay behind in the context of migration in the international human rights instruments. CRC mentioned about children of migrant workers have the same rights to live with their families as all children. And then the Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all Migrant Workers and Members of their Families mentioned about child 11 times, but rather linked to children follow their parents as migrant workers. They did not mention about children stay behind. That's my understanding, my interpretation. And it's very interesting here that this convention pay attention on the freedom of religion and belief of the child following the parents migrate to destination countries, and requests member states of destination countries to ensure the children will have name, registration, birth, and registration of the birth and nationality. It also requested the country of destination to ensure the access to education and equality of the education, as well as reunification of migrant workers, the family of migrant workers. It also asked the destination countries to ensure that children can continue to learn their mother tongue, culture, and local languages. Next, please. So by looking at the studies done by HRWG, also the understanding the existing instruments in ASEAN in relation to migrant workers, as well as the international human rights laws in relation to migration and children. So there are a number of challenges, because that's the topic of this session. As mentioned by the previous speakers, that children who stay behind has been the issue that has been overlooked by a lot of policymakers at the national, regional, as well as international level. It seems like there's an assumption when we talk about migration, we talk about the movement of the migrant workers. So the fact that they left behind a member of families, that is not the business of the migration. So perhaps this is the thing that we need to change in terms of how regional migration management should be looked at. So of course, all the policies will central to the migrant workers, but migrant workers is not only single individual. They are parents, they are mother, father, grandparent, aunt, uncle. They have families left behind, and then they have interest to improve their economic family's situation. And I also indicate here that by putting a review mechanism at the MMSWD, perhaps this becoming more political rather than practical. MMSWD, if it is not changed, meet twice in a year, meet once in 2 years rather than meet every year. I'm not sure whether it's still like that, but I believe when it comes to a technical issue and operationalization of the declaration should be given to the institution that actually doing the action, not necessarily at the political level. And again, there's a question of who will be the one to monitor the declaration. I mentioned earlier about the lack of norms in relation to the regional migration management framework in ASEAN, and as well as in the international level. And in terms of opportunities, I think Ibu Yuyum already mentioned about the process of developing the plan of action from this declaration. So this is something that perhaps the study will become very, very useful to inform how this declaration can be implemented well by looking at those who are overlooked in the process. I think it should start from defining children in the process of migration. I think the book has a very good contribution in looking at different kind of categories of children in the process of migration. I also see, as I mentioned earlier, this is a way to build the bottom-up framework for right protection for children in the context of migration. In terms of ICHR, definitely this document will be included in our activity to harmonize instruments of ASEAN in relation to human rights and migration in the region. Migration and mixed migration also included in our 5-year work plan 2021-2025. It mentioned about mixed migration and inclusive education for migrant children. But when we look at the inclusive education, we are actually thinking about refugee children, migrant children, the children of migrant workers, and migrant children is more on ensuring right to education for children in destination country rather than in origin country. That's when we think about children and migration. I think again this book will provide inputs and dimension on how we talk about children and migration. Next, yeah, I found this very interesting. I found this in UNICEF fact sheet by looking at how outcome of children in the process of migration. I'm not going to explain this, but I just want to show you that this is very important diagram or illustration. I think some of them already mentioned in the book presented by Yoga in earlier presentation, addressing health, education, and also psychosocial effect of migration to children. Again, this kind of framework should be useful for later ASEAN to develop better regional management of migration. I think that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Excellency Yuyun Wahiningru, for highlighting your points. Although apparently you took almost 20 minutes for your presentation.
Sorry.
But anyway, well, probably because you are an overarching body, I'll give you more time with other panelists. It's okay. But you raised some question as well. It can be maybe responded later on by Ibu Yu Yum on some clarification, yeah, on the why the review, as long as, as far as I can understand, they are very political body. Maybe that's a good one in terms of the mindset of the at the regional level. Finding from this discussion.
Oh, there are three categories of children in migration.
Children, yes, okay.
You miss the children as migrant workers.
Yeah. The unaccompanied children. That's they are already migrating as children. So there are three categories of children, and some of them are really not protected even by norms. You know, even at the global level. That's a strong point from your presentation as well. And thank you for being honest. You haven't started yet with collaboration with a specific issue on children stay behind with other. That means way forward could be then included as you present the opportunities within HICHERS to collaborate further at the regional level with ACWC and SOMSWAT and others. Thank you for that. Now we have two others responders or discussion. One is from the global level, the ILO, Pak Irham Ali Saifuddin, the program officer of ILO in Indonesia and Timor-Leste, and the last one will be Rachel Nudistari. Without further ado, I'd like now to invite Mr. Irham Ali Saifuddin. But wait a minute, before I go further to Pak Irham, I'd like to mention to all participants, please be advised that you can now download the research, the whole research book, from the link which was posted by the Secretariat in the chat icon. If you go to the chat icon, you will see the link and you can download it, you know, the book that we are, of the research. And until now, there has been some questions addressed in the Q&A, and there was also already some answer directly. But later on, we will mention that. I think it's good to highlight it for the common discussion. Now, Pak Irham, I give it over to you. You have the floor, 7 to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Bang Rafendi, as the moderator of this great occasion. I'm sorry because I just lost my internet connection.
Yeah, I can hear. The connection is getting. I hope your connection is getting better. Say it again, please.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear. Yes.
Or should I turn off my video first? Yeah.
Yes, probably well.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, please.
You can.
You only turn off video, not the whole internet, right? How come you are frozen now? Pak Irham, are you still there? Oh, he's gone. This is the most difficult time in the Zoom session when somebody gets disconnected. The internet problem. Okay, in that case, I think we can now go first to the next speaker while waiting for the recovery of Pak Irham. Oh, Pak Irham, are you already there? Hello? Hello, Pak Irham? No, we cannot hear you. Okay, I think I will give first the time for to Rachel. Yeah. Well, hopefully after you speak, then Pak Irham will already be recovered. Okay, Rachel, please, you have the floor. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Para Fendi. And I also would like to convey my congratulations as well as appreciation for Human Rights Working Group for publishing a very important report on the stay behind children. And I will also try to make my point really fast because probably we can have like more interactive sessions where panelists can answer the questions from the participants. So as Shamini mentioned, actually my reply to the two main questions that Human Rights Working Group provided to Forum Asia was based on our report on human rights in Southeast Asia in times of pandemic, because the COVID-19 pandemic have created such a tremendous and significant impact to our daily life. And I think it's also very true for mixed migrations and stay behind children in the regions. And I also would like to share based on the report, we saw the overall pattern on human rights situations, which is includes securitization and shrinking civic space, increased surveillance and violations of the rights to privacy. And this is also very true for migrant workers and their families, as well as violation of fundamental freedom, including freedom of expression and assembly associations. And the first question that Human Rights Working Group asked for Asia is what kind of modality, partnerships, or collaborations that ACWC, ICHR, and ACMW can do to address the stay behind children's problem. And I actually would like to share with you that within our report, we did a survey to people of ASEAN, asking them whether they are satisfied with ASEAN response to the pandemic. And unfortunately, 80% of respondents stated that ASEAN response has not been effective to protect the rights of its people during the pandemic. And they see the long-term impact, especially for women, children, and young people. So I think it's very important for ICHR, ACMW, and ACWC to ensure meaningful engagement of civil society organization, including children themselves, to provide meaningful input for the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. So this framework will be finalized in November during the ASEAN Summit. And I believe that in October, there will be space for civil society organizations to provide feedback to the plan. And currently there are 4 thematic priorities, and under strategy number 2 on human security, there are mentioned on children, there are mentioned about gender and migrants. So I think it would be really good to specify on the needs of stay behind children, as well as the migrant workers need to get educations, educations, health services, but also it's important for them to get civil and political rights, ensuring that migrant workers are able to express their opinion, creating assembly, having trade unions so that they can negotiate better wages and benefits for themselves and for their family who are left behind. And also, when I share about the gender element within strategies two of ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, it would be really important for the ASEAN Human Rights Mechanism to ensure that ASEAN adopt a gender transformative approach to the issues of left behind children, because childbearing, childcare is not only the responsibility of the mother, it's also responsibilities of fathers and even extended families. So would be really amazing if that modality can be adopted, so that we can set the norm for a better ASEAN after the pandemic. Secondly, it's also very important for us to look at the innate function of ASEAN human rights mechanism. ITER has its protections mandate, and HWC term of reference also stated that they can advocate on behalf of the victim. So we need to still encourage ASEAN member states to revise and review ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights term of reference so that they can provide protections not only the left behind children but also the migrant workers as well, especially because migrations characteristic in ASEAN is very nuanced due to its mixed migrations modality. So the nexus between migrant workers and trafficking in person is very thin, and therefore a robust work of IHR to address the issues need to be done. Secondly, on ACWC, definitely because they can advocate on behalf of the victim, then would be really good to highlight the issues of leave behind children, so that it can be incorporated as their work plan priorities. And I also would like to highlight that we all have active, and it will be amazing if all of the ASEAN human rights mechanism are able to utilize active to not only promote children's rights, but also ensuring their meaningful participations in the decision-making process on policies about them. That's my response on the question about what kind of modality, partnerships, collaborations for protections that ASEAN Human Rights Mechanism can have. The second response on the question is on what kind of programs and activities that Forum Asia do to promote the right of children who left behind. One of our theory of change is to create strong civil society organizations to be able to meaningfully engage with ASEAN human rights mechanism, so that the ASEAN human rights mechanism can be more independent and efficient in addressing human rights issues within ASEAN. And therefore, what we did in Forum Asia is facilitating dialogues among civil society organization and ASEAN human rights mechanism. And we also have partnering with children's rights and youth rights organizations. So we've been created a conversation between the IHR representative and HWC representatives with youth and children, and we aim to do more of that in future. And because now everyone are utilizing online platform, I think it will be really interesting as well to have utilize this momentum to build this dialogue between ASEAN human rights mechanism and children and youth. And also we do an annual monitoring. We documented ICHR and ACWC milestone and challenges and provided recommendations. So pursuant to the report that Human Rights Working Group have issued, we definitely will put that into our reference point and probably will advocate for more inclusions of these issues within ICHR, ACWC, and ACMW work in future. So I think that's from my side. I hope that's not too overwhelming because probably everyone are already tired now. And with that, I will give back the floor to Para Fendi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for being concise. You are exactly 10 minutes in your turn. Thank you for responding to what modality Forum Asia could do and has been doing so far in terms of general protection of migration, as well as now the new issue is coming up, you know, the stay behind children of migrants as one of the issue that can be inserted in the ongoing advocacy on the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Program, as you mentioned. It's good you raise this point because we didn't mention it earlier, but to put it, you know, on this issue. Thank you. Okay, Pak Irham, I understand that you're already back. Congratulations, welcome back again. Now I give it over to you, 7 or 10 minutes. And after that, we have a short break, like 2 minutes for straight stretching. And then after that, we can continue our discussion for way forward and discussion. Pak Irham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bang Raffendi, our moderator for today's great discussion. I would like to apologize for my internet connection problem. Hopefully during my turn, it will be more stable and then we can share our thoughts each other. First of all, let me express our greatest appreciation and congratulations to Human Rights Working Group, the researchers, and all people that participated in the development of this very important book. This book is among very well-researched documentations that I have witnessed, not only in the sense of portraying the situation of those stay-behind children, but also provide us further about very data-rich reference that will benefit policymakers, particularly in the 3 countries covered by the research. And again, this book is very relevant, I think, particularly for the policymakers to develop preventive measures as a part of anticipated strategies to allow us to particularly to recover from this pandemic crisis, particularly in the area of labor migration. We have witnessed today and experienced how the COVID-19 pandemic has severely disrupted the global economy. All international organizations have been forecasting negative global economic growth in 2020. To observe this impact of COVID-19 crisis, ILO has regularly issued monitoring on COVID-19 and employment. Maybe I want to share. Maybe some of you are already familiar with the ILO COVID monitoring impact, but maybe I want to share it a little bit here. In its first edition of monitoring, ILO estimated that 25 million workers would lose their jobs. This figure then revised in the second edition that issued just 2 weeks after the first edition, warning that at least 1.25 billion workers, or equivalent to 81% of global workforce, affected by the COVID-19. So you can imagine the impact of COVID-19 to the world of work. Furthermore, in its newest sixth edition of the report, which is the latest one, issued a couple of days ago in 20 September, ILO also warned the continuation of uncertainty of labor market disruption during the second half of 2020. So migrant workers also are among those who badly suffer from the crisis. As we can see, tens of millions of migrant workers forced to return home because of unemployment in the destination country, and then in the home of origin, they face unemployment and poverty. So in addition to this situation, their family will also suffer financially from the loss of remittances normally sent to them. On the other hand, other migrant workers have found themselves stranded in host countries without access to social protection, very little money for food and accommodation. It is estimated that there are 164 million migrant workers worldwide. Nearly half of them are women, comprising 4.7% of the total global workforce. Migrant workers and their families are currently in the situation of crisis within a crisis. Millions of migrant workers have lost their jobs and are now expected to return home to their respective countries with weak economies and rising unemployment. In this context, I think I would like to encourage the multi-stakeholder efforts to advocate for social and economic integration policies and strategies for migrant workers at national and regional level. I also strongly believe that this crisis not only bring us some negative impact to human life, but also open us many opportunities as well in the context of stay behind children. The pandemic provided us with an opportunity to jointly formulate strategy for much better inclusion of welfare and rights of children of migrant workers into our national and regional policy development agenda. In addition, we need to admit that the needs and interests of stay behind children of migrant workers are largely absent from the mainstream debates on the child protection, child labor, and migration. In this occasion, I would like also to inform you that recently, ILO in collaboration with UNICEF has issued a policy brief on COVID-19 and child labor. Maybe it's not specifically address the children of migrant workers and stay behind children, but at least provide us the latest situation of children worldwide. The brief says that in the last 2 decades have seen a lot of success in the fight against child labor, with 94 million children less engaged in this child labor work. Now, the pandemic is likely not only to reserve this progress, but millions more children risk being pushed to work at early age or under hazardous conditions, including the children of migrant workers. Some studies conducted by ILO also confirm that every 1% point rise in poverty could lead to at least 0.7% increase in child labor. So you can imagine migrant workers also badly affected by the pandemic. So maybe we need to be more aware of the potential risk of the life behind children to become child labor in Indonesia. In Indonesian context, I think recently BPS report in March just mentioned that our poverty rate increased 0.5 56 points from September 2019. Now our poverty rate has become 9%, more or less. And then with this figure, you can already make simulation about the risk of child labor increases in Indonesia. The situation also may worse in migrant workers' families, in which in the pandemic situation, their income and remittances have disrupted badly. Then this in turn will risk their children not only to stop from school education, but also may further to trap them in child labor. Secondly, I think I want to highlight about the Indonesian context, about the demographic dividend that Indonesia will experience in 2030 and until 2045. During that period, we will have more people in productive ages in our demographic picture. However, we still find huge challenges until now. In terms of youth unemployment, I think Indonesia now is still the highest in the region. That's why if we would not be able to address this youth unemployment, we should be worried that such demographic dividend could lead into demographic burden or even demographic disaster. Well, the research on stay behind children has successfully portrayed the social costs of stay behind children and the children of migrant workers. We also need to promote more inclusion, equal and just access, including participation of these youth and children to optimize their potential to further taking a part in the country's development in upcoming years, particularly when Indonesia enjoys the demographic dividend. In the context of what has been done by the ILO in the area of stay behind children, we need to admit that we don't have much activities and programs that particularly address to this issue. But in the past, we do have a lot of experiences, particularly to address the children of migrant workers worldwide, particularly in the work that done by our IPEC program, the international program on the elimination of child labor. But just to share with you that I think in 2018, we have supported the government, particularly the Ministry of Manpower, in developing distance community parenting. We call it as collaborative parenting. And at that time, it was the request of the ministry in the context to support their third pillar of village-based village-based productive migrant productive village or desmigrative. We developed the module supported by the Tanoker. I think one of the NGO that become the resource person in this research. But unfortunately, after then, after we provide the module to the Ministry of Manpower, I think then the desmigrative program no longer become the top attention of the current government administration, unfortunately. And then, but currently, through one of our project named Safe and Fair, we try to address this issue through the migrant resources centers that we established in several countries in ASEAN, like Cambodia, Laos PDR, Malaysia, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Yeah, I think that's all from my side. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to say regarding the stay behind children, but in this occasion, I would like to invite every parties, every stakeholders to really advocate this issue, particularly in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, since I think we have a lot of rooms to influence the policy, particularly in the area of social security and social protection pillars in the COVID-19 response. So then by this, we will try our best to avoid the persistent problem of high youth unemployment problems in Indonesia, since there is clear link between poverty and then the increase of child labor.
Okay.
Lastly, regarding the collaboration with UN agency, I would like to inform you that currently the ILO in headquarters, along with the UNICEF, is working in providing the updated global estimates on child labor, including to accommodate or to update the impact of COVID-19 to child labor globally. And in Indonesia, we are ongoing plan to conduct the research on the impact of COVID-19 to child labor in Indonesia. Maybe we need to provide particular attention as well to the children of migrant workers, and then by the data that we will obtain, we can provide a solid recommendation for the government to develop more targeted policies, particularly to address the children of migrant workers and the stay behind children. I think that's all from my side. Bang Effendi, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Irham. Thank you. Apparently you have a lot to say. It's also difficult to stop you. But it's good that although there is no specific attention yet on the issue of migrants, the stay behind children, the stay behind migrant children, this is, I think, it makes this research getting more important to be advocated and to be inserted in all the existing program at the global level as well as the regional level, especially on the child labor issues, because it's very much also the different kind of children, which was already mentioned in the discussion earlier. Now we are already 16:45. I have a proposal. I have a proposal to make the discussion and way forward shorter. Try to stop at 5 o'clock. That means I would like now to highlight some of the questions coming into the discussion, which was actually already addressed by Yoga, because most of the question addressed to Yoga in terms of the research, and one which is very interesting as well. There is also some contribution from one participant who has already done a similar research back in 2014 from from Smeru Foundation, I think, which already did some research on that and has some similarities on the challenge which was posed by Yoga in the key finding presentation. And there is also sharing from the Indonesian Child Welfare Foundation, Ibu Winarti Sokaisi, that they have already given attention to this the issue of children migrant workers 14 years ago. Wow, amazing. It was 14 years ago. It was already started, although it was in a program called the ECD, the Early Childhood, the ECD Early Childhood Education Program in the village of the community. It's very much related as well with the program conducted at the national level by Ibu, not by Ibu, Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Children Protection. And it was also mentioned at the village level by Ibu Sutia. So looking at these linkages, probably I'd like to invite Yoga to just give some question regarding to the stay behind children raised by a friend from I think she's from Myanmar, and asking about, you have mentioned the migration phenomenon in Myanmar is relatively new. Could you explain more about the methodology? Because Myanmar people have migrated for more than three decades. And Yoga has already answered it by saying that, yes, it was of course started 3 decades ago, but it was only year 2000 that Myanmar started in terms of policy with regard to the migrations has been taking place in Myanmar. If Yoga would like to give some additional information on this and also responding to other questions, please, Yoga, I offer it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Pae. Yeah, I saw the questions. I answered to these questions already. I just want to reiterate that the out migration or the migration out of Myanmar before 2010 was primarily induced by conflicts. So labor migration or the migration for economic pursuits from Myanmar to other countries officially began actually in 2000 in late 2000s. So yeah. And then so yeah, so comparing Myanmar with, for example, Indonesia and the Philippines, of course, Myanmar looks relatively newer because it only started as a migrant-sending country in late 2000s. But the Philippines and Indonesia, for example, they started way back in 1970s. And then responding to Rene Hanning, who is the most vulnerable among stay-behind children, we actually found that female stay-behind children are more vulnerable because we have found cases in which, for example, the female stay-behind children become victims of sexual violence perpetrated by the immediate family members, for example. And then in Lombok, we also found that this particular issue intersects with other issues such as child labor, sexual slavery, and human trafficking as well. So female children are particularly at risk. And then responding to Mayang Rizky from Smeru, we actually found quite similar quite similar cases. So the persisting um, division, traditional division of gender roles means that the migration of mothers actually require adjustments, and it usually poses more challenges to the stay-behind children. But of course, there are cases in which, for example, the fathers then reconstruct their fathering identities and reconfigure parenting responsibility. And in those cases, children seem to have less obstacles adjusting. So it very much depends on who stays behind to take care of the children, and then it also depends on the duration of the migration as well. It also depends on the destination of migration. For example, certain countries like the Middle Eastern countries, the migrant parents have difficulty accessing communication devices. But if we compare it to, for example, Singapore and Hong Kong, migrants seem to have more access to communication, which then enables them to connect with their families in countries of destination, and that helps with parenting as well. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Yoga. And I would like to assume that also as your closing statement, because now I would like to invite all speakers to make a closing statement, because I'm trying now to close down and give it back before 5 o'clock to Daniel to close this session. Yes, at least there are 4 points of way forward listening to all. One is there is a need on a more synergic regional framework in terms of the norms as well as in terms of the mechanisms. The second, there is also an opportunity and further dialogue from the civil society, national entities, national commission, with the ACWC on the drafting process of the regional plan of action and looking specifically to the stay behind children. Number 3, Ibu Valina Ginting mentioned us that these things, this research, what we are discussing today, is also very much related with the current activities to achieve sustainable development goals, particularly in addressing the violence against children. This is part of the violence against children in the broader meaning of violence, lack of education, psychological problems, and economic opportunity, as well as civil rights. And yes, the last part, number 4, which I think could be a way forward, is at the global level. And now we heard from the ILO that ILO did give attention to children's in general, child labor. Child labor, it could be a child labor in the situation of migration, but it could also be children's of the migrant workers. Well, ILO has already given attention to migrant workers, but they did not put attention, policy proposal, any program to the stay behind children. So I think that's a good opportunity as well for us to advocate the stay behind children, the right of stay behind children, to engage this ILO, UNICEF, and other institutions, including the CRC regime in terms of protection that should include the stay behind children's issues. So those are the 4 general way forward. Now, as a closing, I'd like to invite each of the panelists to give just one short closing statement after listening to all presentation, all respond, and after listening to me as well. And I like to give first to Rachel because she requests to have another appointment that she had. Rachel, over to you. 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Pa. I just want to echo my point on how we need to utilize the momentum of new normal for creating better standard within ASEAN. And I think it's very important to utilize gender transformative approach in looking at issues such as children and women, because like parenting responsibilities actually lay beyond the woman migrants herself. And also secondly, we are in a very strategic timeline as we can provide input to the ASEAN leaders for them to create the ASEAN post-pandemic recovery plan. So I really urge everyone in this very important forum to take time to know more about the plan, and Forum Asia will hold a consultation for CSOs for creating inputs for it. Hopefully we can meet again in that platform and I think it's also important for us to start looking at the hindsight on how we can monitor the utilization of the post-pandemic recovery plan itself. That's all, Para Fendi. Thank you so much for such an honor for me to be able to speak here. And I would like to excuse myself. Thank you so much, Pa.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. May I invite now Ibu Yuyum? Yuyum?
Yes, I'm back. Okay, thank you, Pak E. I just thinking about how to implement the RPA. Now, please give the input and comment for our RPA, because this is if we give a better RPA, and also will become a better for the implementation in future. If it's something lacking in there, we cannot. I think it's still we have to waiting for the next RPA for the more than 10 year again. That's why, please, if your organization getting the draft, please give the input and comment. If we're missing something, just put it, your idea. That's better for us rather than just after that you criticize. Why is like this? Why is yes? That's always like that. That's why I want to all of us in here, and maybe if you need the draft, I can say the draft. Please give the input, but not for circulating. But please to give the input on the draft. That's my the last point for me, and congratulations for the HRWG to conduct these activities and launch the book of the Stay Behind Children. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Yuyu.
No voice.
Komentar terakhir Ibu Sutia. Ibu Sutia ada? Belum di unmute, Bu. Oke, baik. Kalau gitu yang lain dulu barangkali. Saya persilakan Ibu Valentina Ginting. Your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Pak Effendi. Thank you for this survey. That we hope that this book will give us the insight how all of us have a responsibility, to against the child's in migrants workers, especially because when Pak Ilham said that this is not only for specifically we talk about the child's migrants worker, but also how the impact of this pandemic to the in the increase of child labor. It's very important for us to discuss. I think in this in other moments, I think. So we hope that these surveys give us the collaborations together, how we can see that all the not only from Indonesia, from Asian country to collaborate and to ensure that the fulfill of child right of the migrants workers as as the to realize that child right is we can work together. I think it's they're very important for us to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. Thank you, Ibu Valina. Thank you for the invitation to further collaborate at the national level. May I invite now Ibu Yuyun? You can also use your time to respond to the question, probably, which was written on the refugees. You have the floor. Over to you, Yuyun.
Question? There is a question for me?
There is a Q&A. The question, I read it for ICHR reps. As I know, ICHR initiate the making of refugee body. How the progress of that body, and would the body have special task to protect refugee women children?
Okay, to clarify, it is not ICHR initiative, it is ICHR Indonesia suggestion. So it's two different institutions. So in ICHR, we haven't talked deeply about refugees. We discuss refugee issues together with UNHCR in our one of meetings, but not necessarily coming up into something tangible. It is therefore I suggested to come up with the regional body on refugees protection with three functions. First is to coordinate the work. So it's become the partner of UNHCR because now UNHCR doesn't know who to talk to in this regional organization. So let's so UNHCR has the capacity, has skill, has expertise to deal with these refugee issues. So ASEAN does not need uh, to repeat or to have a burden on it, but it is very important for ASEAN to be the partner of UNHCR to facilitate the cooperation, to facilitate the logistic and other things. So it's like the AHA Center to the UNHCR. And this is becoming, the body can be the clearinghouse for refugee issues because again, data collection is always problematic in this region. So that is why to be able to respond the problem, we need to have a data, proper data to help refugees. And this is also become the coordinating body among 10 member states, how to talk about it, how to develop norms, how to develop instruments, mechanism to address to address the refugee issues. And I believe it is not the new initiative. I think number of initiatives already there since 2015. It just the issue of refugees has been diverted into irregular migration and then end up with trafficking in person, then SOMTC becoming the lead of these irregular migration issues. In fact, refugees now, refugees is not necessarily a trafficking in person. So perhaps having specific mechanism with these three functions will help ASEAN to deal with refugees issues in the region. That's my clarification. I also suggested that Indonesia to take a lead on this because Indonesia becoming the transit countries of the issue, and Indonesia may have leverage to discuss about the issue in the region. So now I talk. Now I can give my last
closing
remark.
statement.
Okay. So for the closing statement, ICHR at the moment is continuing the research on migration management. When we talk about stay behind children, this is something very new for us, and this is something that should be included in the process of regional management, migration management. How to ensure that the right of migrant workers or individual rights to migrate for work to be protected, and to be able to do that, we need a mechanism, we need instruments, we need management of migration in the region. At the moment in ASEAN, our regional migration management is like a patchwork. We find this putting in this point, and then and the picture is not yet completed. So your book, HRWG's book on stay behind children, definitely contribute to this patchwork. I suggest that this book to be continued, to this research to be continued to address more and more countries, so we can have better understanding about what happened in the region, not only 3 countries, and then how the study on all 10 countries can really build up on the patchwork, how to complete the picture on how on regional migration management. So I hope Sasakawa Foundation will be able to help HRWG again to do more research on this. This is definitely the breakthrough. This is something that have potential to become policies in the region. Take a long time, but it would be good that that regional policies started with solid research as what HRWG has done. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yuyun. Quite long closing statement, but this was very useful. All right, Ibu Sutia. Ibu Sutia sudah ada kembali. Please, 1 minute pernyataan, closing statement, Bu Sutia. Unmute dulu, Bu. Sudah di-unmute? Halo, Ibu. Nah, silakan Bu. Closing statement, Bu. Ibu Sutia. Ibu Sutia bisa dengar saya?
Ya, ya Pak. Ya, ya.
Bisa kasih pernyataan terakhir, Pak. Pernyataan terakhir, 1 menit aja.
Ya, baik. Ya, ya, udah jelas suaranya ya. Terima kasih Pak Rafendi, selamat untuk HRWG yang sudah launching buku dan saya pikir ini sangat bermanfaat. Dan ini bagian dari jejaring kami yang ada di tingkat bawah gitu ya. Dan hal yang kami lakukan menjadi harapan kami bisa menjadi bagian dari proses-proses pengambilan kebijakan yang lebih tinggi berkaitan terhadap upaya-upaya perlindungan terhadap anak-anak pekerja migran yang ditinggalkan. Ada banyak hal yang bisa dikolaborasi antara kami yang selama ini lebih banyak bekerja di akar rumput atau di basis dengan pihak pemerintah di berbagai level dan tentunya juga kawan-kawan di internasional NGO yang sangat mungkin untuk melakukan advokasi di tingkat nasional maupun juga di tingkat regional. Bagi kami, upaya menjamin atas perlindungan anak ini bagian dari inklusivitas yang menjadi hak hakiki dari seluruh anak Indonesia. Anak-anak pekerja migran juga menjadi anak-anak kita yang mereka punya hak sama dengan anak-anak yang lain di Indonesia. Saya kira itu, terima kasih atas kesempatannya untuk bisa belajar bersama panelis yang lain. Dan selamat untuk semuanya. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Bu. Pak Irham, closing statement, please.
Thank you, Bang Rafendi. I would like to reiterate what I have presented earlier. Integrated responses and multi-stakeholders cooperation is really needed in the context. First is in the context of COVID-19 pandemic recovery, since there are a lot of threats that we will face together in the future, particularly in the situation of lack of labor market availability, the huge potential risk of unemployment, and then the increase of child labor across the world, including in Indonesia. And then in the second context, I would like invite multi-stakeholders collaboration, particularly in the region, in the Asia and Pacific, regarding the huge number of youth unemployment, since the majority of ASEAN countries will enjoy demographic dividend in the next 5 to 15 years, including Indonesia. And then by addressing the youth unemployment, we will save the next generation, particularly in the context of COVID-19. According to the fourth edition of ILO monitoring on COVID impact and the world of work, it is warned that currently youth is among the most vulnerable groups of workers that encounter that badly COVID-19. I think that's all from my side, Pak Raffendi. Once again, congratulations for the launching of this very important book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Irham. Thank you for that. Now it's time for me to say a closing statement. I'd like to thank all speakers, all discussants who has been contributing to this very, very interesting discussion. Almost 3 hours we are sitting in front of Zoom without break. That's incredible. That's unhealthy anyway. But I'd like to thank participants who are staying also here until almost the end. Now, I'd like to congratulate the researcher again and all the panelists and the organization. I'll give it back to the Deputy of Human Rights Working Group, Daniel Vigra, to make his closing statement.
Instead of giving closing statement, I'd like agree with Pak Ilham. I'd like invite everybody who are here to really, as a collaborative work in the future, to really see that this issue are really becoming our focus, especially because they are one of our most vulnerable group, especially during the pandemic. So this study started when at that moment the world celebrating like 30 years of international community adopted a child rights convention, and then today I think 20 years after all ASEAN member states ratified the CRC convention. So I think now the problem in the ASEAN, as always mentioned and always we discussed, that the document came out or enacted by the ASEAN has not really came out with the legally binding or carry on the weight on the implementation. So that is why this exercise is really important for us to really mapping out the actors, the opportunity and challenges. And throughout during our discussion, at least we are not just only launching our study. Of course, I'd like to congratulate for all researchers, as well as it is also tools of us to engage. So it's really becoming a policy dialogue among of stakeholder, like it's more bottom up, because it is really evidence-based advocacy that we propose to the all sectoral body in ASEAN, all the government and related organization that we are hoping that in the future we can collaborate further. Last but not least, I think there are two main points that I can active stigma of stay behind children or left behind children. I think all panelists agreed on it, as well as the finding of the research. And then the second of all, the promotions of the right of migrant worker. And last but not least, it is also a part of the policy advocacy. Have a photo session before we really close the session. I thank you so much for all panelists, speakers, researchers, and of course the participant of the participant. Last but not least, you can download the book in the chat box, and then you can get the giveaway that already announced on the chat box also. So it is part of the campaign of the engagement of this event. I thank you so much for the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, as well as the Forum Asia. If I would like to mention Samini and Rachel, and from Sasakawa, Fumiko, Nami, and Maho. Thank you so much. And please have a take picture. I'll take it. If you don't mind, please show up your face in front of camera.
Jesse juga.
Jesse, if you want, okay. And one under the Icara Bluetooth, maybe Ica. Okay, 1, 2, smile. Okay, by this, I thank you so much for everybody. Have a good resting day for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Ada.